On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Holly Hudson. The UN has warned that Pakistan is facing a monsoon on steroids as it launched an appeal for more than £130 million of aid. Officials claim that one-third of the country has been completely submerged underwater and more than 1,100 people have died since mid-June as the country continues to deal with weeks of devastating flooding. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says urgent collective action is required.
The climate catastrophe has killed more than 1,000 people, with many more injured. Millions are homeless. Schools and health facilities have been destroyed. Livelihoods are shattered. Critical infrastructure wiped out. And people's hopes and dreams have washed away.
Well, this afternoon, Boris Johnson said the UK will send a fitting package of support to Pakistan and his deepest sympathies are with the country. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has promised that there will be more support coming for people struggling to pay their energy bills in the UK. He stressed, though, that it will be a very difficult end to the year for many.
Whichever of the two candidates gets in next week, what the government is also going to do is provide a further package of support for helping people with the cost of energy. What we've got to do is get through the tough months. And I'm not going to, shrink from this. It is going to be tough in the months to come.
A 21-year-old man who was fatally stabbed at Notting Hill Carnival has been named as Takayu Nampard. Nampard, also known as the rapper Takur Stretch from Bristol, was attacked on Ladbroke Grove last night and died in hospital. Tributes have been paid to two teenage boys who've died after getting into difficulty in open water near Londonderry. The boys, named locally as Reuven Simon and Joseph Sebastian, have been swimming at Loch Enack on Monday evening. Irish Premier Michel Martin expressed his deepest sympathies with their families. The jury in the Ryan Giggs trial have been told that the judge will now accept a majority verdict. The jurors have been deliberating for over 16 hours but have so far failed to reach a decision they all agree on. Giggs denies all charges against him, including assault and controlling behaviour. And Ofcom has confirmed it's taking no further action over thousands of complaints about the 8th series of Love Island. Announcing its decision, the regulator said negative behaviour was not shown in a positive light. Nearly 7,500 complaints were made about the show, many concerning alleged misogynistic and bullying behaviour by some of the male contestants. Now time for today's weather with Joe Wheeler.
Puzzles sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello there. Well, we're in the last few days of the summer and the weather remains mostly settled thanks to high pressure. But that high pressure system is starting to move away. And whilst we won't see much change in the weather over the next few days, by the time we get to Friday and into the weekend, it's going to be a very different picture, really looking quite autumnal. Rain arriving from the west and then we'll have showers, maybe some thunderstorms as well, because this little system will bring up some warm and humid air from the south. But certainly for today, we're looking at nothing like that. It's very quiet, a lot of fine weather around, some good sunny spells, particularly out towards the west and the southwest. More in the way of cloud over eastern counties and the risk of a few showers for parts of East Anglia and the southeast. Later in the day, we'll see those showers starting to transfer their way a little further northwards as well, into parts of Lincolnshire, up into Yorkshire. A few showers may break out over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But really, these are going to be the exception. The emphasis is very much on dry weather. Temperatures reaching a high of around 23, 24 degrees Celsius in the sunny spots. That's 75 degrees Fahrenheit, but an awful lot cooler than that on eastern coasts.
Times Puzzles sponsors Talk TV weather.
Today is a beautiful day, you're having a nice beer in the sun, and yet everybody believes they're going to die.
Nobody believes they're going to die.
Are you worried you're going to die from climate change?
Yes.
When will you die?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, one and all, and welcome to another special edition of Tice Talk Drive. I'm standing in this week. I'm sort of like the David Bull sort of after party, and the sort of the advance party to Vanessa Feltz next week. I'm here for the next 3 hours. I hope you'll be with me too. We have got an action-packed show on this Tuesday. And are you back at work? Are you in the office? Are you looking forward to September? Well, in this action-packed show, in the first hour, of course, we've got to get our political update. We've got Peter Cardwell here to talk about the latest news, the latest gossip, who's going to win. And also in the first hour, we're going to be focusing on that cost of living crisis, top tips, and hearing from a publican about the pressures on pubs, on the hospitality business. There is so much to talk about there. And also, we've got Charles McAllister in talking about shale gas, whether or not that's going to progress under whichever of the two leaders is selected in the second hour, after we've been hearing about what's been going on at the music festivals, at Reading and in Leeds. What is going on in lawless Britain? Utterly extraordinary. In the third hour, of course, the state of the economy. And yes, she's back. Irresistible, really. I'm not talking about anybody else but Meghan Markle, but much more fun. Late on in the third hour, do not miss this. Literally, when I was a teenager, one of my absolute heroines in the music world was none other than Kim Wilde. She is on the show at 6:30. You will not want to miss that. And just before we go to Peter Cardwell, I just thought you'd be interested in this day a few years ago. Well, yes, in 1941, on the 30th of August, Churchill approved the first ever nuclear programme. If only Nick Clegg had listened to him about 12 years ago in 2010. In 1979, a certain cricketer called Ian Botham, in just his 21st test, he scored 100 wickets. Sorry, he got 100 wickets and he scored 1,000 runs. And he is, of course, now none other than Lord Botham. And yes, in 1995, get this, folks, 27 years ago, the American news network CNN joined the internet. Just imagine, there was life before the internet. Hard to imagine, really, isn't it? Anyway, we've got lots of great guests, and I want your interaction, your views, please. Your calls 0344 499 1000. Tweet us at Talk TV or at Tice Richard. Text 87222. Whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to share, whether it's joy or your frustrations or your hopes. And my question is, really, could either of these leadership candidates, with just 6 days to go, do you think either of them might, in an optimistic world, exceed your expectations? That is my big question. Could either candidate exceed your expectations? Stay with us for the next 3 hours. You're listening to Tice Talk here at Talk TV. Well, he is patiently waiting. Here, of course, it is the one and only weatherman, the great weatherman, Peter Cardwell.
Lovely to see you, Richard. How
nice to see you, thank you. Well, goodness me, 6 days to go.
Indeed.
Heavens, this
thank
process
goodness. This time next week
over.
we will know who the next leader of the Conservative Party is, and probably around this time actually they'll be Prime Minister, because we get the announcement on the Monday at around lunchtime. That's going to be in in Westminster at the QE2 Centre around midday. Could be midday, could be 12:30, not entirely sure just yet. And then on the Tuesday, Boris Johnson gives his last speech as Prime Minister, and then we're not sure whether he goes to Buckingham Palace or Balmoral, because the speculation is that the Queen will not come down to Buckingham Palace, because she's usually at Balmoral at this time of the year. And then whether it's Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, let's face it, probably Liz Truss, she will then go to see the Queen and become Prime Minister, and then her cabinet reshuffle starts.
And then it's up. But the truth is, I imagine that she's been working on that for some time, on the basis that she's the hot favourite. Now, I've got a little fact to share with everyone, which is that I actually knew Liz Truss about 14 years ago briefly, when she helped me write a pamphlet for a think tank, totally coincidentally, Peter, which was called Reform.
Reform, really, brilliant.
And I think I may have actually helped her transition from being a Lib Dem to a Tory, because it was about that time.
Oh my goodness.
And she wrote a pamphlet with me on academies, because of course they'd just started under Tony Blair, and I was chair of one of the early ones. So anyway,
are you taking credit for a political career? Is that what you're?
I just,
wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you.
What I'm really wondering is, where did I go wrong? I mean, she's about to be Prime Minister probably. I'm in a TV studio. But she's not going to have much time to celebrate her appointment, if it's her, or indeed if it's Sunak. I mean, they haven't got 100 days, they've got 10, 20, maybe 30 days.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there'll certainly be a lot of hype around what she's going to do, who her cabinet choices are, and what the first few days actually look like for her as the new Prime Minister, which it looks as if she's going to be. The question is then, what happens in regard to the cost of living? She's talked about a fiscal event. It won't be a budget because there are certain rules around that, but there will be some immediate help probably for people in regard to the energy crisis. We will know more about that when she becomes Prime Minister, keeping her cards close to her chest at the moment. But the people who will help her with that, it's almost certain that Kwasi Kwarteng, the current Business Secretary, will become Chancellor, and Simon Clarke, who's the sort of Deputy Chancellor at the moment, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, looks as if he'll move over to the Business Department, to Kwasi Kwarteng's old job, and that sort of looks as if that's what those are going to be two absolutely key people in her cabinet.
They really are, because those are going to be such fundamental roles in trying to help avoid a depression, a recession, get the economy going, and help people with the huge challenges that are faced. And what about Home Secretary? What's the sort of latest thinking, Peter?
So the smart money is probably on Suella Braverman. She is someone who stood for leader herself, then tried to get her supporters to support Liz Truss. I think also in terms of that leadership competition, a very popular person was Kemi Badenoch, who may end up as Education Secretary. I think there might be some people staying on in certain roles. I think Nadine Dorries may well stay as Culture Secretary as well.
That's pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, an interesting one.
Fascinating what people think. Should Nadine Dorries stay as Culture Secretary?
Well, the big battles to be had with the BBC as well, and she's well into that on Channel 4 and well into those battles already. Interesting as well, Jacob Rees-Mogg will probably have some sort of role as well. We're looking at various people. I think in terms of Therese Coffey, she's been a big supporter of Liz Truss, currently the Work and Pension Secretary. She could end up as Chief Whip, or and James Cleverly perhaps as Foreign Secretary. He's been very much behind Liz Truss, his boss currently at the Foreign Office. He's a junior Foreign Office Minister. He may well make the leap to be Foreign Secretary. So we shall see. And the thing with the reshuffle is, and I know a little bit about them having been on the inside of government for a time, is if one thing, it's a bit like Jenga, if sort of one thing goes wrong and one person says no, or there's some sort of problem in terms of a person being offered a role, or you're trying to perhaps move someone, let's say for example Liz Truss wanted to move Priti Patel, for example, from Home Secretary to say another cabinet role, like maybe chairwoman of the Conservative Party, for example, might be one thing that she might do. Well, then we're in a situation where if Priti Patel says no, then do you sack her completely and worry about her on the backbenches because she still has a bit of a following, or do you put her in another role? So these things can go wrong quite quickly.
And if it is Team Truss and Liz Truss as Prime Minister, what happens to Team Sunak? Does she try and bring some of those into her cabinet, into her tent, so to speak? Or given how the blue on blue has been pretty vicious at times, is that now almost impossible?
Well, it's been a pretty fractious campaign, and there certainly have been individual people. I would think it probably astonishing if Dominic Raab got a cabinet role, for example, because he's been the sort of attack dog in chief for Rishi Sunak and probably thought he was going to be Rishi Sunak's Chancellor at one stage. Also, Michael Gove, of course, has ruled himself out of any frontline role, but there's no love lost between him and Liz Truss anyway, to say nothing of what he's been saying during this campaign. Further down the pecking order, I think there will be an attempt to bring in some Rishi Sunak supporters, provided they haven't been particularly critical of Liz Truss or sort of nasty within that. But it's been a very fractious campaign. Every party, as you know, Richard, is a coalition. Exactly. You've got to bring people together. There are people who believe different things. Certainly with the Conservative Party, they've had a very long conversation about what their party is.
This has been like you could have had two general elections in this period.
Exactly, it's gone on forever. So if they don't know now what people think, if they don't know what the fault lines are and what needs to be done to unite the Conservative Party in a way that it hasn't been united since 2019, that kind of high point for Boris Johnson where he got that 80 strong majority and everybody in every one of his MPs was signed up to getting Brexit done. That is a very difficult thing to achieve, but Liz Truss is going to have to try to achieve it fairly soon after she becomes Prime Minister. She probably will.
And if she wins, what happens to Rishi Sunak? I mean, would she offer a cabinet post? Would he accept it, or will he go to the backbenches?
This is a big question. I mean, he has said that if he's on the backbenches, which presumably he will be, presumably he won't throw his toys out of the pram and resign as an MP. But he said he'll vote for her budget, which is kind of an interesting thing, given that he has been saying that her economic plans are mad. But supporting your leader's budget is a sort of absolutely number one thing of being an MP. So I think that he'll do that. I think she may try to offer him something, but he's made a few noises about the fact that he couldn't really serve in her cabinet. I would be surprised if he does. I also think Rishi Sunak will be thinking about the longer term. He'll be thinking in 2 years' time, if the Conservative Party lose the 2024 election, which may happen, or do very badly, or they're forced into some sort of coalition or something, and there's a change of leadership, well, people might say, hold on a second, did we get it wrong 2 years ago? Should we actually...
Are you inferring that he could actually potentially stand again?
Yeah. I don't see any reason why not. Jeremy Hunt did this time. Okay, didn't do very well. And we have serial people who've stood. Ken Clark, for example, has run a number of times. Yes. Michael Gove's run a number of times. So it's not out of the realms of possibility. I think it is probably unlikely that Rishi Sunak will ever now be the leader of the Conservative Party.
I'm now chuckling at the prospect of a contest in 2 years' time between one Boris Johnson and one Rishi Sunak.
That would be pretty box office. That would be pretty epic. Because Boris Johnson certainly will want to emulate his hero Churchill and come back and attempt to rescue the Conservative Party if things go horribly wrong in the next 2 years. I'm not saying they necessarily will, but I mean, 2 months ago it looked as if, maybe 2.5, 3 months ago, it looked Boris Johnson was talking about a third term. So who's to say what's going to happen in the next 2 years?
Well, that's interesting. Well, a tweet's coming here from Paul, he's straight out of the blocks. Richard, I think there should be a complete clear out of the existing cabinet. No one to stay whatsoever. Another one here, doesn't matter, Truss or Sunak, long-time voter, not again. I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating. The optimist, and I always want to be optimistic in a way, even when it's so difficult, is that with a good team around her, which, I mean, rumours it could even include Sir John Redwood, for example, helping in the Treasury.
Lord Frost, maybe, as
Lord
well.
Frost, of course, potentially right in the heart of it. You know, with a determined team of people who sort of what I call been round the block once or twice. You know, they know how things work. Actually, you know, some of this stuff could be sorted with a sort of a determined, robust approach. Frankly, just doesn't... Anybody who wants to step in the way, they've just got to literally just move them aside and make some big, bold, tough decisions.
Well, it's interesting. I think you make a really good point there, Richard, and certainly the problem with Boris Johnson for many people, and people may not agree with my assessment here, but he was a very good campaigner, but not a brilliant governor. Dominic Cummings was the one who came in and helped him govern, certainly for the first year and a half or so, and then it sort of went a bit wrong after that. So it'll be really interesting. Liz Truss has certainly come on leaps and bounds. She's a much better communicator than she was at the start of this contest, but it's been a very weird contest in terms of the fact that Rishi Sunak, who I think most people would say is a far better communicator, speechmaker, etc., hasn't connected with the Conservative membership in the way that Liz Truss has, but how she will actually govern. And she has more experience than most government ministers. She's been in and out of a lot of departments. She's been Secretary of State a number of times. We'll see what happens when she becomes Prime Minister.
Whether she has the command. Well, the good news, folks, is that it's not many days to go. Thankfully, we are bored of this contest. We're nearly there. Peter Cardwell, Talk TV's political editor, thank you very much indeed. Fantastic. Stay with us, folks. Coming up straight after the break, we're talking to Sarah Coles, the personal finance analyst from Hargreaves Lansdown, with her latest thoughts and top tips. It is, of course, Tice Talk. It's Talk TV. Welcome back, my friends, to Tice Talk at Drive Time. Here it is 4:20 on Tuesday afternoon. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, with your thoughts and your answer to this question. Do you think either candidate to be the Prime Minister, we're going to know in literally 6 days' time, thankfully, finally, do you think either of them could exceed your expectations? Well, I've had one message in here from HH who says, helpfully, Richard, with your previous connection with Liz Truss, we now know who to blame if it all goes horribly wrong. Thanks very much for that. There we go. Keep those messages and calls coming in. But I'm delighted now, as we sort of focus on the cost of living crisis and how people are going to get through this winter with it, to be joined by Sarah Coles, who's the personal finance analyst at Hargreaves Lansdown. Sarah, great to have you with me on Tice Talk this afternoon. I mean, you must be being sort of asked this question all the time, but, you know, I'm 57, I don't ever recall facing the sort of challenges that that the government faces and that we as consumers and businesses face. I mean, it's just a sort of an oncoming torrent, but there must be a way through it.
Yes, I mean, the scale of the price rises that are coming in October is quite hard to imagine how people are going to be able to cope with it. A sort of 80% price rise, and that's for domestic customers. And I think there was a piece of work done by the University of York which showed that about 2/3 of people could be in fuel poverty by January. So it's just an enormous scale of people who are going to be struggling. And as you say, businesses facing these rises as well. And of course, they've not been protected by the price cap, so they're seeing enormous rises in their costs. And so, yes, I mean, it's, as you say, there's got to be a way through it. It's, for a lot of people, it's going to be very hard to see what that solution is going to be right now.
I mean, I guess everybody is really waiting somewhat patiently, it's fair to say, for the new Prime Minister with an emergency sort of budget to come up with a series of measures, and then people know where they stand. And we talked a lot about the impact on consumers, but of course so many people actually they either run small family businesses or they're employed by small family businesses. The SME sector it's the lifeblood of the UK economy, and these energy bills, as you say, there's no cap on that at the moment. Lots of representations being made. I mean, it's as or more serious for businesses than it is for the consumers.
I think, one of the problems that we have is that we've known that this problem's been coming. We sort of got the full force of how bad it's going to get. We discovered sort of the end of last week, and yet we've still got this long wait. They were expected to be either 2 weeks or 3 weeks till we get this sort of budget statement. When we hear whether, as you say, whether there'll be any support either for consumers or for businesses. One thing that really both the candidates have been really reluctant to go into any detail about what support might be available. There's been sort of some of the chat around, with Liz Truss talking about getting rid of green levies. Obviously, there's the overall VAT cut, whether there'll be a VAT cut on the energy costs as well. But there's very little talk about really big changes. So, a lot of the opposition parties talking about freezing the energy price cap. Nothing along those lines has come out from either of the leadership contenders.
Well, yeah, that's right. And funny enough, I actually put out, in my capacity as leader of Reform, I put out our own emergency energy plan last Thursday, and within that we actually had some detail for business support, because I think, some of the numbers that we're seeing for the quotes that businesses are receiving on electricity, they're like 4, 5, 6 times higher than their previous tariff. Later in the show we're talking to some publicans and things about that. But there is quite a lot of help being offered by some sort of supermarkets and the likes of Burger King and Aldi and Iceland. There's lots of sort of vouchers and things being talked about and being offered by some of the retailers.
Yes, the sort of the canny shopper. I think once obviously we're all at the stage where we're sort of trading down to like supermarket own brands and trading down to the budget supermarkets. But there's an array of different websites. So the Money Saving Expert website is fantastic at it. There's also one called Hot UK Deals, and they bring together where all these vouchers are. And so if you've got the time and going through these sites, you can find all sorts of freebies, all sorts of discounts. So it's kind of, I think for a lot of people, we've done the easy things. There are alternatives. So I think one of the problems is that people, they think they've done the sort of traditional things. You know, they're cutting back, they're cutting out the luxuries. You know, they're really working hard to cut that cost, and they can't see where the next step is. So we had a piece of research out just today that sort of said that actually there's, you know, people are thinking about paying their bills with credit cards or not turning their heating on at all. And it's worth knowing there are other alternatives. So little things like, you know, moving to using your microwave oven rather than your conventional oven, just because it's more efficient to use. So I think whilst there's no easy solution, they're not going to cut your costs overnight by, you know, an absolute enormous amount. It is worth looking at everything you can do before you do these really big drastic cuts.
I mean, I even sort of read about supermarket deals in the sort of the cafes and supermarkets that'll almost end up as sort of you know, an extension of people's homes. There'll be lots of people using those. I must confess, I'm not going to be adopting one of the tips I read, which was to cut your own hair. I think that... but I suspect that various partners will probably be trying out their skills on their partner's hair. That might be another way of saving a few quid, but I think that would be catastrophic for me. And there are actually, there's been various sort of indications of the pricing of various things, and as you say, using microwaves less. I guess a lot of people actually might deliberately sort of start to actually have cold menus as opposed to hot cooked menus and things, and indeed just eat less. Just so many different ways to try and save, you know, 50p here and there, 50p. That it all adds up slowly but surely.
And I think one of the big changes that we're going to see this winter is a move from heating the home to heating the person. So it's, you know, it's looking at only putting the heating on in certain rooms for certain times, you know, things like, and it's the sort of old-fashioned things that those of us who are a bit longer in the tooth really do remember. So, you know, hot water bottles during the day, lots of jumpers, you know, those sorts of things, just to focus on trying to keep an area that you're in warm. I mean, people who are in real sort of serious need, I know that a lot of the sort of local organisations are looking at warm spaces that they can provide during the day for people. So people aren't stuck at home in a freezing cold environment. There are places they can go in order to keep warm. I mean, it sounds incredibly drastic, but these things do need to be available for people, because we're not really getting any certainty on the support that's going to be available for them through the government.
Yeah, that's right. And other sort of tips about just turning down the thermometer on the boiler, for example, whether it's a gas boiler or an electric, or all these things, I guess, people are just going to have to focus on. It's going to be very, very difficult. Sarah, thank you so much indeed for sharing those thoughts and top tips with us here this afternoon on Tice Talk. That was Sarah Coles, the personal finance analyst at Hargreaves Lansdown. She spends her whole time looking at these issues. It's not going to be easy, but we have to be optimistic. We have to find a way through, and we can share our top tips. You may have some top tips, in which case give us a call. 0344 499 1000. How are you going to save? 50p here, a quid there, a fiver there. We had great fun yesterday about the joys, the benefits of cash. And maybe, you know, cash is king. If you've got cash in the pocket, then you know how to spend it rather than spending too much on the debit card or whatever. Anyway, coming up after the break, we're going to be talking to a publican, Dawn Hopkins. Don't go anywhere. You're listening at the home of common sense. It's Tice Talk here at Talk TV.
Join me, Ian Collins, every day on Talk TV. There is nothing we hate more than hypocrisy. Discussing the big issues. Why was it so hard to establish the deputy leader was at a meeting with her colleagues? The callers: Alan in Grimsby, Tracy in Burton-on-Trent. Dave, thank you very much. Picking apart the big stuff. This simply does not wash. Look who's back under the spotlight.
This is Talk TV News.
Good afternoon, I'm Holly Hudson. The UN has warned Pakistan is facing a monsoon on steroids as it launched an appeal for more than £130 million of aid. Officials claim that 1/3 of the country has been completely submerged underwater and more than 1,100 people have died since mid-June as the country continues to deal with weeks of devastating flooding. This afternoon, Boris Johnson said the UK will send a fitting package of support to Pakistan and his deepest sympathies are with the country. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister Minister has promised that there will be more support coming for people struggling to pay their energy bills in the UK. Speaking on a visit to Dorset, Boris Johnson pledged that his successor will provide a further package for Brits facing an 80% rise in the price cap, but stressed that it will be a very difficult end to the year for many.
Whichever of the two candidates gets in next week, what the government is also going to do is provide a further package of support for helping people with the cost of energy. What we've got to do is get through the tough months ahead. I'm not going to, shrink from this. It is going to be tough in the months to come.
Well, it comes amid more warnings over the cost of living crisis today. 6 of the UK's biggest pubs and brewing companies claim there'll be widespread job losses and mass closures if they don't get immediate government help with energy bills this winter. While Arla Foods, which makes dairy products like Lurpak, which has hit more than £7, has warned prices will rise even further due to ongoing inflationary pressures. Earlier today, Goldman Sachs said UK inflation could top 22% next year. And the jury in the Ryan Giggs trial have been told that the judge will now accept a majority verdict. The jurors have been deliberating for over 16 hours but have so far failed to reach a decision they all agree on. Giggs denies all charges against him. That's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Welcome back, my friends, to Tice Talk. It's just after 4:30 this afternoon. I am running Drive today, tomorrow and Thursday before Vanessa Feltz starts next Monday. Something to look forward to. Lots of messages coming in here. Richard, about the new cabinet. Ministers will be moved to different departments, but nothing ever gets done. Just look at Kwasi Kwarteng, he goes on. This is Mike who sent this. He's done absolutely nothing in his post for years except write books, no energy policy, and he may become Chancellor. Mike thinks this is mind-boggling. Well, I think the answer is we've got to be optimistic that with some good people around him, and I'm sure he must understand the gravity of the crisis. But yeah, I've been disappointed with his tenure as business secretary. I think that he's been way too naive and slow to pick up on the energy crisis. Exactly a year ago, I could see what was happening. I was talking about shale gas, I was talking about the risks, and he seemed to be rather blasé. But yeah, that's the thought from Mike. We'll quickly head up to Durham, where Sean is on the line. Good afternoon, Sean.
Hello, Richard, mate. How are you doing?
I'm
tell you
good.
what it is, I'm sick of the back to these MPs, mate.
Really? I thought you were normally quite happy with them, Sean.
They're coming back on the 6th of September. They're going to have another break on the 23rd to the 17th of October. Something's got to be done with these people, like.
Well, they're rather like the holidays.
They're going to be off for another 3 weeks. What's the reason?
Well, they will claim that they've got their party conferences and they've got to go and write their policy documents and their speeches and their fringe events.
Off for 7 weeks.
You're quite right, Sean. I can't argue against it. I'm completely with you.
I shouldn't be shouting, but at the end of the day, they're doing my nut in, like.
Well, stay calm. Don't get overstressed. But I think we're all doing our head in because we want them back at work. Solving these challenges ahead of us, don't we, Sean?
Well, what's going on, man?
Well,
you know what I mean? What gives them the right to turn round and say, right, I'm going back to work on the
I can tell, Sean, that you want. I can tell you want to be an MP so that you get those long holidays. Sean, thank you very much for that call from Sean in Durham, who is rather jealous of the long holidays of MPs. I'm delighted now that we're going to move from Durham to Norwich, where we have got Dawn Hopkins, who's the Vice Chair of the Campaign for Pubs and also licensee of the Rose Pub and Deli. Dawn, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. And, you must be spending every waking hour working out, the challenges ahead of you, what's going to happen to your energy bills, your food bills, and how the customers are feeling. How tough is it, Dawn?
It's quite terrifying at the minute, when you put it like that, about the time spent trying to work it out. It's coming at us from all angles. We're having our own bills. I've heard some people got 300% for their energy bills. We have our suppliers, especially our brewers, are having exactly the same problem. And yes, our customers have got the same thing. So it's just coming at us from all angles at the moment.
And the brewers, the six largest, or six of the largest breweries, have written to the government asking for some immediate support and intervention for businesses who've been completely ignored in this crisis. Like, you know, many businesses were ignored, small businesses, during the COVID crisis. I mean, are you getting any sense from them or from any other contacts that you've had that the government understands the depth of the challenges?
No, not at the minute. I'm not sure they understand it from a consumer point of view or a business point of view at the minute. We've written to Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak from Campaign of Pubs as well, asking for help, because we need it now. We can't wait. We're in a situation where we are going to have pub closures, hundreds and hundreds of them, as well as many other businesses. And at the moment, nothing is coming from government, nothing at all, to put any fears at bay.
And, I mean, for those pubs that can stay open, you know, hopefully that's as many as possible, but it's just so difficult. I mean, what do you think that sort of the nature of trade will change? For pubs that offer food, might they offer less hot food because that consumes more power to heat the food up, and offer more cold food? Or do you think that customers will be coming into to pubs in communities to keep warm?
It's a possibility, but at the minute we've got to try everything to actually keep open to be able to do that. But if nothing changes, I can't see it viable for a lot of pubs to stay open, even on shortened hours where we have less staff on, less lights on, less heating on. These rises are ridiculous. It's not something that you plan for or can find a way out of by just making small little cutbacks. It's too much. It's much too much for that.
And so you mentioned they're possibly also opening shorter hours. I mean, might that be sort of, instead of being open, you know, a longer part of the day, you might just be open either at lunchtime or in the evening?
Yeah, it's all a possibility. It's all things that we're having to look at. But at the end of the day, we've got to have customers. And if people are really feeling the pinch because their prices have gone up, their costs have gone up, who's going to come in? You know, we're facing a real dilemma here. It is a crisis, because if we can't keep our doors open and people aren't coming in, we're going to lose a lot of pubs. And when you've lost a pub, it's gone forever.
And in so many communities, the pub it's part of the heart of the community. You know, it really is. It's where so many friendships are made, stories are swapped, anxieties shared. It's, you know, it really is. It is the heart and soul of so many communities.
Absolutely. Even if you're not a big pub goer, I'm sure there's times in your life when you've gone to a pub to, you know, celebrate someone's birthday or at Christmas, all those kinds of things. And yes, there's plenty of regular pub goers who do come in. It's their social life. It's where they meet people, where they sometimes sit and just have a quiet drink and read the paper, get away from the world. But at the minute, it's looking very doubtful that there's going to be many pubs left.
Yeah, I mean, in my representation to the government, what I said is, you've got to plan for that this could go on for much longer than people think. And people need to know that support's there, so that you can make the decision to, you know, to keep investing, because if people just think this is going to be for a few months and then it gets back to normal, but in reality, many people's question. I've just had a tweet in here, actually, Dawn, saying, will energy prices ever return to normal, or is this the you know, we've got this for the medium term? And I think we've got to plan almost for the worst.
I think you're right. I mean, I've just had the outside of a pub painted that needed doing, and now I'm thinking, should I have spent that money? You know, I might need that to keep going. It's a really, really difficult situation, and I think if there isn't some immediate action taken to help hospitality in particular, but, you know, all businesses at the moment, we're going to have a real problem on our hands. You know, with pubs especially, like I say, once they've closed, it's very unlikely they're going to open again as a pub. A lot of us live above, so not only if I had to close, not only would I lose my business and my income, I lose my house or my home with my children. There's all sorts of problems that this is going to cause.
Well, Dawn, thank you so much for sharing those challenges with us. I really do appreciate that, and our very best wishes to you and and all of your colleagues in the licence, in the pub trade and the hospitality, because hopefully that support will come and fast to give you that confidence. That's Dawn Hopkins, the Vice Chair of the Campaign for Pubs, and also the licensee at the Rose Pub and Deli in Norwich. If you're near there in Norwich, go and give Dawn some support if you can. Stay with us. Coming up after the break, we'll be talking to Charles McAllister from the UK onshore oil and gas. We'll be talking about shale gas. Don't go anywhere and give us a call 0344 499 1000 with your ideas, your top tips, how to save money, how to make money. Let's try and make some money. Let's be optimistic. It's Tice Talk. It's Talk TV. Welcome back, my friends, to Tice Talk this Tuesday afternoon. Well, we were just talking there with Dawn Hopkins about the challenges for pubs. But listen to this. A friend of mine, John, has just sent me a message. He's listening to the show. Goodness me, he must be bored at work. He says a friend of his, a dyer of wool, his power bill is £5,000 a week currently. But when the contract runs out in October, it will be, get this, folks, £50,000 a week. So that's an increased tenfold. That's a dyer of wool, and he's talking to his customers about huge price increases, or he'll have to close by Christmas. So it's not just the pubs and the hospitality. This is across the whole range of industry. I mean, it is seismic, literally seismic, and those are hard facts from my friend John. And talking of seismic, one of the ways out of this crisis, and I've been banging on, as people know, for a year about the opportunities for shale gas. And let's just play this little clip from the two candidates when they were interviewed, I don't know how many weeks or months ago now when this contest started, by Kate McCann, the Talk TV political editor. Just take a listen to this.
I need to ask you first, Liz Truss, fracking, yes or no?
Yes, if local communities support it.
Rishi Sunak, fracking, yes or no?
Yes, if local communities support it.
Anyone think they'd been prepped to sort of say exactly the same thing? They've been rather blue on blue and not quite so friendly ever since, but there we are. Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the Director of Policy, Government and Public Affairs, that's quite some title, at the UK onshore oil and gas lobbying group, Charles McAllister. Charles, great to have you with us again. You know, we've spoken before, some weeks ago now, about the whole shale gas industry, and, you know, there's no question there is a huge shift. Yeah. Many, many more people realise the opportunities from the shale gas industry. You've got both candidates there talking about, but with local consent. Yeah. And I guess that is your big next challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, the last time I was on your show, Richard, I said to you I was cautiously optimistic about our potential, or about the likely state of the industry in the future. Now, there's no cautiously, I am optimistic. I think the narrative coming out of both campaigns is very positive. What local consent means is a good question, because we haven't seen anything in black and white. We have had no policy direction on what that actually means. But our view on this hasn't changed. Our view is we need to be deemed nationally significant infrastructure, akin to power stations, large wind farms, pipelines, things like that, because we are a nationally significant industry. We have the potential to produce enough gas to meet UK demand for 50 years.
So that's really important, and because there have been lots of sort of questions about, you know, the opponents of the shale gas opportunity. People like, actually, I think Dale Vince I was debating with recently, and he said, well, that's nonsense, it's 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And these surveys are really, really important.
Yeah, so it was funny, I was watching that when he was debating, and he said that the British Geological Survey released a report the week before, saying that there was only 5 years. Total fabrication. So there was a study that Nottingham University did in 2019, so not the week before, but we rebutted that at the time. What they did was they took a well from the edge of the Bowland Basin in the northwest England, and that was drilled by a company. They took the core out, the rock, and they said, no, we don't like that core, we're going to decommission that site, and they did. And then these academics took that well and extrapolated it across the entire country. So that should be deemed worst case scenario.
And then the other issue that is often raised by people who are, you know, concerned about this or want more reassurance. Yeah. And obviously the US, and there's a great reason why US gas prices are about a quarter of ours.
A ninth.
A ninth of ours, is it now? Yes, of course, because prices have moved so quickly. And that is, of course, they've got a domestic shale gas industry. But people then say, yes, but what about the earthquakes, the seismic earthquakes?
Yep, so Ed Davey, who has doubled down on his position on shale, introduced a regulation that said we would have to stop if we hit a 0.5 on the Richter scale. Now, the surface equivalent of what it felt from a 0.5 is the same as me sitting down on this chair, so I wouldn't say that's a major incident. Now, the events in Lancashire, the event at the Preston New Road 1Z well, on which the moratorium was based, a report on that, the largest event from that was 1.5 on the Richter scale, which is the surface equivalent of me dropping a honeydew melon in this studio, okay?
Don't try this at folks' homes, this sounds really dangerous. And then, heaven forbid you might drop a honeydew melon from shoulder height.
Indeed, and then even if we look at the largest event from the PNR2 well, it was a 2.9 in the Richter scale. It lasted for 2 seconds, and the surface vibration from that event was half of what is permitted at construction sites. So if the standards applied to us were applied to any other industry, such as quarrying, construction, geothermal, coal mining, it wouldn't happen.
Okay, so that's really important, because, you know, people need to understand this as this becomes a real topical issue on the issue of you know, seismicity, and an earthquake sounds quite scary. Yeah. But anything above 0 is an earthquake. But as you say, 0.5 is the equivalent of sitting down or standing up from a chair. So that's very different. And with the drilling of a pad of there might be 10 or 20 wells or 40, is that give or take a maximum?
Yeah.
How long would that take in terms of months to do the drilling? Because then it changes once you've done the drilling, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it depends on the size of the rig, to be honest. So there's a current cap in the UK at the height, and it will vary depending on the specific geology. Now, in America, they can drill a vertical and a lateral in 13 days, which is just unbelievable. So if we could take some of the best available technology, there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to replicate that.
Okay, so you're talking about a maximum months. I mean, we're going to, if we progress it, we're not going to be as quick as the Americans day one.
Yeah.
But you're talking about 2 or 3 months of drilling.
Yep.
And then the drill rig is taken away.
Yep.
And you're left with what?
You're left with the boreholes, and then what we'll do, they'll put a Christmas tree on top. It's called that because, well, it doesn't really look like a Christmas tree. It's just a
we want some baubles on that Christmas tree.
It's just a collection of valves, and then what they'll do is they'll bring in what's called a frac spread. It's effectively just pumping equipment, and then they'll do effectively 98% water, 1.5% sand, and then 0.5% chemicals, which, by the way, have to be deemed non-hazardous to groundwater by the Environment Agency in order for us to use them. And then that will be pumped down at high pressure, about 12,000 psi, in order to fracture the rock. And then if you were able to go down and look at it, what you do is you get these dendritic fractures out. So imagine an oak tree.
Yes.
And at each section, each hole in the pipeline or in the pipe.
But that's very deep. That's how deep is that?
2.3 kilometres deep.
So that's happening way underground.
Yeah.
But then obviously, then the next question. Yes, but Richard and Charles, the water's going to be contaminated.
Yeah, it was one of these arguments that started in like 2008, and when I do hear it, it really annoys me because it shows a basic lack of understanding of the regulations in the UK. So look at the Infrastructure Act. It bans fracking shallower than 1 kilometre in the UK. It's fine with us because the shield's 2 kilometres deep. The maximum fracture propagation you could get, it will get nowhere near the potable aquifers, the drinkable water.
Okay, great. And we've got a caller in here from Merseyside. David, hi there. Good afternoon, David. Welcome to Tice Talk. Thanks for ringing in. Have you got a question for Charles?
Yeah, a question really. Would he like this fracking in his backyard?
Would I?
Most of these things are in villages. Would he like it in his backyard?
Absolutely. I would have no problem. Well, it depends. If it was my backyard and I owned the land, I would get money from that. If I was in a local community and it wasn't my land...
No, listen, I'm a member of the Fighting Fracking. I'm a chairman of a group in Lancashire.
Yep.
And we don't want any fracking. And we'll fight it to the end.
And David... And David, what's your main concern?
And everything, so you won't get away with this.
Okay, sir. So if you look at some polling that we did,
nonsense, by the way, you talk a lot of propaganda.
I'm absolutely not, sir. Absolutely not, sir.
All the water you have to use, gallons and gallons of water.
Okay, so
water.
I'll happily answer that question if you let me, sir. So if you look at the work that was done by the Institute of Directors, they said that a shale gas industry, even at full pelt, would use 1% of what industry and agriculture use in any 1 year. So again, if you think that fracking would be bad for water use, then why don't you look at other industries? In terms of local support, if you go on our press releases, we did some polling and we asked local people in the north of England, would you, or all across the UK, but in the north of England we were asked, would you support fracking in your local area if you got 25% off your bills, which we can deliver through our community benefits package. Imports cannot deliver that. And a majority said yes. 58% of people in the north of England.
David, so is water your main concern?
One of them is that loads of water, but we're short of water, and then we're going to use chemicals in, dangerous chemicals as well.
I've already explained this as well. We cannot use chemicals unless they are designated by a process called JAGDAG, non-hazardous to groundwater.
So the non-hazardous chemicals, David, I hope that helps answer your questions. It may not make you not be the chair of your local anti-fracking group, but David, I really do appreciate the call. Only because of time, we've got to move on. We've just had, actually, funny enough, Gary has just tweeted in, Charles, how much water does fracking use? Because we're not exactly awash with it at the moment.
Yeah. I think, the answer to that is even at full pelt, less than 1% of what industry and agriculture would use in any 1 year. So it's not a huge shift in water. And can I just say to the previous caller as well from the frack-free group, if and when we do get facilities up and running, we would have to do local engagement first. I would hugely encourage him to, and anyone else, all local people, to come and talk to us. You know, we deal in facts and figures, not hysteria and hyperbole.
No, that's right. I think that is really important because there has been lots of myths, including... Now, answer this other question that some people raise, which is flames coming out of taps.
Oh, again, when this came out in America, so we have to do groundwater baseline monitoring, okay, in order to prove the level of methane in the water. So, like take the Lancashire site for example. You had to do baseline monitoring before, baseline monitoring during, and there's no change. So if it doesn't go into the water, how are your tap's going to be on fire? In America, they get water from local boreholes. Now, there is naturally occurring methane that has been.
Naturally?
Yeah, and it has been. It's been there for, like, George Washington lit a river on fire.
Naturally occurring methane in the existing well water. Charles, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Lots of messages and tweets I'll try and get back to, because it is a big, important, vital subject. It's part of our energy security potential. This, folks, is how we get prices down. It really is that vital. We've got lots more coming up after the news. Stay with us. It's the home of common sense. It's Tice Talk. It is Talk TV.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 5.
Good afternoon, I'm Holly Hudson. The UN has warned Pakistan is facing a monsoon on steroids as it launched an appeal for more than £130 million of aid. Officials claim that one-third of the country has been completely submerged underwater and more than 1,100 people have died since mid-June as the country continues to deal with weeks of devastating flooding. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says urgent collective action is required.
The climate catastrophe has killed more than 1,000 people, with many more injured. Millions are homeless. Schools and health facilities have been destroyed. Livelihoods are shattered. Critical infrastructure wiped out, and people's hopes and dreams have washed away.
This afternoon, Boris Johnson said the UK will send a fitting package of support to Pakistan, and his deepest sympathies are with the country. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has promised that there will be more support coming for people struggling to pay their energy bills in the UK. Speaking on a visit to Dorset, Boris Johnson pledged that his successor will provide a further package for Brits facing an 80% rise in the price cap, but stressed that it will be a very difficult end to the year for many.
Whichever of the two candidates gets in next week, what the government is also going to do is provide a further package of support for helping people with the cost of energy. What we've got to do is get through the tough months ahead. I'm not going to, shrink from this. It is going to be tough in the months to come.
It comes amid more warnings over the cost of living crisis today. 6 of the UK's biggest pubs and brewing companies claim there'll be widespread job losses and mass closures if they don't get immediate government help with energy bills. Earlier today, Goldman Sachs said UK inflation could top 22% next year. A woman has died after falling ill at Creamfields Festival. The 25-year-old from South Wales was taken to hospital on Friday night. Despite their best efforts, she passed away in the early hours on Tuesday. Her next of kin have been informed. The jury in the Ryan Giggs trial have been told that the judge will now accept a majority verdict. The jurors have been deliberating for over 16 hours, but have so far failed to reach a decision they all agree on. They'll resume discussions again tomorrow. Giggs denies all charges against him. And Ofcom has confirmed it's taking no further action over thousands of complaints of alleged misogynistic behaviour in this summer's Love Island. Announcing its decision, the regulator said negative behaviour was not shown in a positive light. Nearly 7,500 complaints were made about the show. Well, now time for today's weather with Joe Wheeler.
Times Puzzles sponsors Talk TV Weather.
Hello there. Well, we're in the last few days of the summer and the weather remains mostly settled thanks to high pressure. But that high pressure system is starting to move away. And whilst we won't see much change in the weather over the next few days, by the time we get to Friday and into the weekend, it's going to be a very different picture, really looking quite autumnal. Rain arriving from the west, and then we'll have showers, maybe some thunderstorms as well, because this little system will bring up some warm and humid air from the south. But certainly for today, we're looking at nothing like that. It's very quiet, a lot of fine weather around, some good sunny spells, particularly out towards the west and the southwest. More in the way of cloud over eastern counties and the risk of a few showers for parts of East Anglia and the southeast. Later in the day, we'll see those showers starting to transfer their way a little further northwards as well, into parts of Lincolnshire, up into Yorkshire. A few showers may break out over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But really, these are going to be the exception. The emphasis is very much on dry weather. Temperatures reaching a high of around 23, 24 degrees Celsius in the sunny spots. That's 75 degrees Fahrenheit, but an awful lot cooler than that on eastern coasts.
Times Puzzles sponsors Talk TV Weather.
Today is a beautiful day, you're having a nice beer in the sun, and yet everybody believes they're going to die.
Nobody believes they're going to die.
Are you worried you're going to die from climate change?
Yes.
When will you die?
Yeah.
Welcome back, folks, to the second hour of Tice Talk. And that little slogan, real people, real lives, real deal, was certainly David. He, from Merseyside, he was the real deal, wasn't he? He was the genuine article of someone who's, I think it's fair to say, not keen on fracking. But I have to tell you, David, that you are in a massive minority, because the tweets and texts and messages have been pouring in, congratulating the gentleman Charles on his calm answers to those questions. Maybe David will reflect on that, possibly over a pint this evening. But anyway, we need to move on to our next subject. I'll come back to some of those messages and calls later, because, of course, Bank Holiday Monday, August, it's the Notting Hill Carnival, there's music festivals up and down the country, which should be a time of fun and joy and laughter and love. But it seems that quite a lot of that hasn't actually been happening, has it? We've had, tragically, a fatal stabbing in the Notting Hill Carnival, 200+ arrests, well over 30 assaults on police officers, and then at the Reading Festival, which I thought was a joyous place. I must confess I haven't been. There were fights and burning tents and Leeds. Parents were literally coming to pick people up. It was so sort of challenging. It almost feels like sort of pure anarchy. Anyway, I'm delighted to be joined by the former police officer Norman Brennan to discuss, is this just a bit of end of summer madness that tragically ended up in the death of one person at the Notting Hill Carnival, or is this a sign, Norman, of a sort of creeping lack of respect, lawlessness just coming in? Thank you so much for being with us. Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Richard. I'd like to say that was the case, but sadly it's not. I think really what it does, it just reflects the lawlessness across Britain that we see on our streets day in and day out. It wasn't just the Notting Hill Carnival that we had these issues. There were many streets in London. There were murders, there were stabbings, there were rapes, there were disorder, there were robberies on the street. But the thing is, huge numbers of police officers were covering Notting Hill Carnival. So the streets around London were less covered, and even then they were less covered even when they were at Notting Hill Carnival. What I will say, Richard, is this, is that there were seven stabbings. One resulted in a fatality. There were 74 assaults stroke injuries of police officers in London. 74 at the carnival itself or across the whole of London? At the carnival alone. Wow. I saw a woman being punched in the face by a man, knocked on her backside. Dreadful. Just shocking. The carnival, it sort of staged a... I mean, there was a horrific time, I forget how long ago, it was a couple of decades ago, where it was, it really was horrific, the activity then, and then it sort of stopped for a bit, and then it came back. I mean, is it getting to the worst of its dire days those decades ago, or what? Look, the thing is, it's often difficult to talk about Carnival because I'm not frightened to tell you the truth, but what happens, it reflects that on some people that you're racist if you have a view. Well, I've policed dozens of carnivals as a frontline police officer and as a detective, covering all the transport systems and the streets of London. We monitor all the gangs, and the police do our best to intercept them, arrest them, etc., etc., while the far majority of people, mainly black people, are enjoying the day. The trouble is, what happens, and it's always late at night on Monday, just as everyone's had a great weekend and have gone home, out come the gangs, out come the retaliations. A man stabbed to death, 6 others stabbed, all of the injuries and assaults on police officers I told you about. It's not just Carnival, it's not just Reading. What we're seeing, Richard, I think if I summed it up, it's this. I often go and sit up on my hill and I pontificate about the world. I look at it. The 5 words that I would say that sums up Britain today is anger, hatred, belligerence, division and revenge. That is what Britain has become. And I keep saying I'm ashamed. I love the police service. It was part of my life. It still is. The police have lost the streets. And I don't say that... So Norman, how do the police, on our behalf, in a sense, how do we get the streets back? Because we can't accept that. I mean, that's just, it's just not acceptable. I totally agree. When I was in the police service, and yes, I keep saying occasionally I'm a dinosaur, they call me that. Well, put that aside. I risked my life day in and day out with tens of thousands of others. When we turned up, Richard, we were in numbers. We took no nonsense. We weren't perfect. We need at least 10 or 20 more thousand more police officers on the streets of Britain. Sadly, our police chiefs, and I keep on drumming it into them, guys and girls, you're too woke, you're out of touch, you're focusing on the wrong issues, you're more like social workers. London's police service, and I hope the new Commissioner and Deputy are going to listen to what the public say, want a police service with robust leaders, those that have vision, those that have passion, those that have direction. Admit to the public when we get it wrong, but by golly, come out and defend the men and women that work tirelessly day in and day out, 24 hours of the day to protect society.
The first thing I would do, Norman, is actually change the name. I mean, you very generously used the word police service. I think it should be a police force. And,
I agree.
You know, frankly, there needs to be some respect. Well, you've had a nice message here, Norman, from Steve, who's just tweeted in. Our new Prime Minister needs to get Norman and other former officers who are, you know, they're the sort of the pillars of wisdom as far as policing is concerned, into Number 10 to sit with the new Home Secretary about how to take our streets back from the lawless individuals. Enough is enough. I think more and more people feel that way. Norman, is it true that sort of a few decades ago, many chief constables were ex-military officers?
Absolutely. When I joined, my senior probationary trainer was ex-military. The majority of my shift were. I was pretty much off the streets, cocky little so-and-so, always wanted to be a police officer. And the times I used to sort of go to rush into something, and literally they'd grab my back and say, Norman, there's backup on the way. There's 15 or 20 of them. They're drunk, they're angry, aggressive. As soon as they see a police officer, it'll be you and me getting a good hide-in. Let's get in when we've got equal numbers and do the job. And the other issue that I want to highlight, Richard, is this. Tell me anything about Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. Tell me anything that they've actually said about law and order. It's been an incidental comment that they've made on law and order in Britain. Kids are dying on our streets day in and day out. Parents are paying.
You're so right, actually, and perhaps we're guilty of it as well. No one's really picked them up on that. I haven't heard that mentioned at any of the hustings.
No, it's not a sexy subject. There are so many children that are killing each other. Yeah. They have no hope, no ambition, no vision.
Another quick question for you, Norman. Should all police officers have tasers?
Absolutely. Every single police officer should have a taser. Every single police car should have 2 officers. The streets are so dangerous on London and Britain now that not even the police are safe. And if the police are not safe, what does that say about the rest of society that look towards the police, the ones that protect the protectors? If we can't protect the protectors, how can we protect society? I'll pose that question to you and the rest of the country.
And in a sense, and I think that's the point, but, you know, on the other side of the coin, another message here just come in, finally, Norman. The police have lost the public, it actually says here, because they're not trustworthy. I'm not sure I agree with that. Anyone who's had dealings with them will know essentially a concern about sort of contempt for the public for trying to solve crimes. I mean, what do you say to that, Norman?
What I say is this, is that the police are not perfect. They've made mistakes, and on occasions, dreadful mistakes. The same thing, the sad reality is, Richard, to finish off with, is that the police are not perfect, but you never hear about the good things they do. You never hear about the 37,000 knives, potential murder weapons taken off the streets. You never hear about the police that take to the knee, not to Black Lives Matter or any other group, but to save lives of children with gaping holes. That is the police service you never hear about, and the mainstream media sadly stoke up anger and hatred, and dare I say, incite anti-police rhetoric against the British police service.
Norman, keep up the good work. Thank you very much. And let's hope that the new occupant of Number 10 takes up that sensible suggestion that gets you and a few wise former police officers in to give them a piece of your mind. That was Norman Brenham, a former police officer who served for 31 years and director of Law and Order Foundation. We've just got time before the break to go up to Newcastle, where Rob has been very patiently waiting. Hi, Rob. How are you doing?
Hi, Richard. Just a quick one. Doesn't matter how bad it gets with, you know, the global warming and everything else. We, as a nation, produce less than 1% of the total in the world. We are never going to get the same as India, as China, as the USA. They need to hit them first. We should be fracking. We should be in the North Sea. We should be protecting what the politicians are put in to do is protect the citizens. and they're not doing that.
That's absolutely right. They're not doing that. They've completely missed this whole pricing crisis, the supply crisis, and it's. I actually just think it's just gross negligence. I really do. I mean, it's cheap energy is absolutely fundamental.
It's the thing is, past governments, both Tory and Labour, they've sold what energy, they've sold what gold, they've sold everything that this country had. We're now in hook to the Chinese, to everybody else. Don't upset the French, don't upset the Germans. We should be building on this. Instead, big business has made billions, and we've sold everything. The cupboards are bare, and now we're trillions of pounds worth of debt, and literally they don't know how to react.
Well, the only cupboard that's not bare is actually the shale gas cupboard, the treasure under our feet. There's over £1 trillion worth of it, Rob. Thank you. Great call from Newcastle, from Rob there. Whilst he was talking, lots of messages coming in. Well done, Norman was one there. Another message here from says, really, just as you say, Richard, police force. Sick of hearing this word service. It's the wrong message. And another one from Tango who says, totally, I agree totally, Richard. I want a police force, not a service. My nephew has just resigned from SEO 19 because of his woke bosses. That is tragic, but that was from Tango. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You know the number to call, or keep bringing in those messages, those tweets, and I will keep reading them out. We have got loads more to come. Coming up after the break, we'll be talking to Ben Habib about the boats coming across the channel. Stay with us. It's Tice Talk on Talk TV. Welcome back, my friends, to Tice Talk here on Talk TV. It's just after 5:20. We're well into the second hour. Messages pouring in, supporting what the former officer Norman Brennan was saying just back there. They really are. Always one here from Frankie, who says, always supported the police until lockdown, but how they treated regular folk during the lockdown and the sort of the attack on our basic freedoms was atrocious. Two-tier policing, and they arrested the easy targets just for protesting. Rather than the real, taking on the real criminals. And I think it's a fair point, actually. It's just a confidence issue. But that requires leadership. And Norman's point is that leadership simply isn't there. Well, another big issue which still goes on and will be very much on amongst the top things on the in tray of the incoming Prime Minister next week will be the rather busy lanes across the English Channel because the boats keep coming. And I broke the story a few weeks back that it was about 4 in 10 of the occupants were from Albania. It now turns out that that was an underestimate. It's currently about 6 in 10 are from Albania, and thankfully we've got, apparently the Home Secretary has got a deal to essentially to try and bring some Albanian police officers over in order to try and accelerate the deportation. I'm not sure this will happen or not, but anyway, we'll be talking to Ben Habib shortly, but I think we're going down to Ealing, where the one and only, the great Jeremy Kyle is waiting. Do you know, it's funny actually, because... Are you there, Jeremy? There he is, yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
You see, what happened...
Richard Tice, how are you? What happened yesterday, mate?
Well, I'm a bit concerned that you forgot to put the pound in the electricity meter down in Ealing. What happened? You couldn't pay the electricity bill or something? What happened?
This is what I heard down my ear yesterday. We can't get a connection. We can't get a picture. We're going to go via the BT tower. No, there's no connection. Are you coming through? No, and I'm sat here going, we cannot hear each other.
I think you just forgot to pay the electricity bill. Anyway, how are you? What's going on?
I'm good. You're looking very smart.
Well, you know,
a few people that looks down the camera. Very impressive.
I've tried to improve the dress code of Drive, since you departed.
Really, I've got the G. What do you mean improve the code of Drive, dear man? That's outrageous.
I know.
How's life anyway? Everything all right?
Yeah, all is very good. Pretty busy. It's full on here. Lots going on, and lots of anxiety about the energy bills, the cost of living. There's quite a lot on the in tray of the incoming Prime Minister, isn't there?
I thought the headline in the Mail today, 19 days from the breadline, I think says it all. We'll certainly be talking about that tonight with Gemma Godfrey, our consumer expert, Katie Nichol, all about the hospitality sector and people whose lives... To be honest, people are looking at it and they're going, what are we going to do in 19 days? We can't afford this, we can't afford that, and it just doesn't stack up. And it's all well and good, I think, for people to say, is this bad? It is bad. It is bad, and you're right about the new Prime Minister, and... If only they'd kept the man that should have been there to do the job, Boris Johnson. But you'll disagree with that. But
I don't think he would have done any better. I read out earlier...
Of course you don't.
Jeremy, a message from actually a friend of mine who amazingly is listening to the show. And he's got a pal who's a dyer of wool in Yorkshire, whose current electricity bill is £5 a week. It's going up in November to over 50 grand a week.
It's not going to be sustainable. And in all seriousness, I read something at the weekend, I don't know if you read this, for the average family to cook a Sunday roast is now going to cost them £5. People's lives are going to change immeasurably, and it is not, as you quite rightly said, just about electricity or gas. It's not just about that, or petrol, or the doctors, or the dentists, ambulance waiting, the NHS... It's almost like this perfect storm. It's almost like we have to deal with so much, and we'll certainly be talking about that, as we will, Richard, be talking about the world's reaction to Meghan Markle.
Oh.
Honestly, I'm supposed to be... You always know, right, when Meghan Markle comes out with yet more, is when Morgan's away on his boat in the... I mean, honestly... Honestly, I don't know what this woman... And people are genuinely saying today, is it time that they're stripped of their titles? Is it time that they are let go of, because she is just like a ticking time bomb of bitterness. And I'm sorry, I can't have her, and I've not been able to have her from day one. And I know people don't like that. We all know what Piers thinks. I think the same, but not because he thinks it, but because you only have to look at her. You only have to look at the way that she goes about things. Somebody said to me today, Richard, you'll love this. You know the new woke lots who say, there's your truth and there's my truth?
Oh, yeah.
I thought what we'd do tonight was point out how untruthful her truth is by doing a few examples, because I don't believe her truth is truth at all. I think honestly, I mean, we're going to have reaction from America, we're going to have reaction from a royal biographer, we're going to have somebody who's very pro-Harry and Meghan and says that they've been given a very hard time. Yeah, it must be hard on $112 million, isn't it?
It's such a tragedy because it was such a great opportunity. It really was, wasn't it, for the royal family, you know, to add to the sort of the confidence and belief in Britain, you know, when the marriage took place. And the country, I think, was so hopeful. And, you know me, I want to be optimistic. I want to sort of hope for the best and think of the best. And it was really actually only when Piers, you know, when he said what he did at some other broadcasting outfit, that I think the penny dropped with me. I still naively wanted to hope beyond hope.
I think we all did want to say no, but I got... my old man is no longer with us, Theo Bingo. He always said to me, well, I think this could be a new start. And within about 3 weeks, he was saying, Z-List, she's going to take that boy, have a couple of kids, and bugger off back to America. And he's absolutely spot on. I can't have her. And I know a lot of people get offended by that, but I cannot. And I believe that she will keep digging and digging and digging. And we're going to ask the question tonight. Prince William, who was quite forceful in making sure that his uncle, the Duke of York, was thrown into the wilderness. Maybe it is time for the future of the British monarchy, him and his father, to say enough is enough. You cannot continue to use your titles. You cannot continue to slag us off whilst only really being where you are because of who you are. It's time to say goodbye. It's time to let... I've always said, Richard, you want to go to California, fine, but then don't moan about press intrusion and sign those deals the whole time.
But, OK, Jeremy, but playing devil's advocate... Are we actually guilty here in the UK, in the media, of giving them more airtime than they deserve, that in a sense accelerates and accentuates and worsens the situation? Maybe we should put the pair of them into Coventry and just ignore them and shut them down.
Completely agree with you. We'll also very quickly, because I've got my old radio skill, I can see the clock, and you're out at 29:26. I know that. Should Rotting Hill be cancelled? Terrible, terrible dramas at Notting Hill over the weekend. All sides of the argument there. Some terrible, terrible videos. First time it's happened since COVID. We'll be looking at Notting Hill. And just as journos tonight, our very own Kev O'Sullivan and Grace Blakely. These two are on the opposite ends of a spectrum, really, to be perfectly honest. And she's very wound up about this T-shirt about kissing a Tory. Apparently, and I'm going to get Kev O'Sullivan to wear a T-shirt saying, have you ever kissed a Tory, and see whether we make that happen. Probably it won't happen, but we'll give it a go.
Are you going to sit them side by side or on the opposite sides of the table?
I haven't decided yet, Richard, because you did a rather good job when you were here last week. We'll be getting you back on, but it's only 3 days to go, and Piers Morgan... Do you not think it's ironic that Piers Morgan, PM, is back on Monday on Piers Morgan Uncensored, the day we get a new PM? So PM for a new PM.
PM for a new PM,
and then I will be cast aside like a spurned lover to return to the undergrowth.
Well, but just finally, when are you going to break the great news of the time of your news show, Jeremy?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You've teased us for so long.
I'm teasing you. I've teased you a long time. All will become certain when it does. Are we 29:26? I just want to make sure, because I'm going to do what I used to do on drive time. Tell me the time of the news and I'll do it for you. Go on.
Yeah, it's all right. No, you know, we're all good. It's 10.
You don't want me to do it. You don't want me to do it.
Go on, you're the specialist. You're the master. Go on, Jeremy. See me out to the news.
29:26, yeah?
It's 17.
17 what?
You're there. You're on, yes.
The news are next at 5:30. You continue with Richard Tice after this. Don't go away, we're coming right back.
I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and this is Talk TV. I think my most memorable and proudest moment in journalism over all these years is actually being on air during the lockdowns, even when I had COVID myself. Over the last 2 years, getting people to tell their stories, not just about people who lost loved ones to COVID, but people who lost their fundamental freedoms, their children's schooling, their mental health, their physical health, their businesses, and giving people the chance to tell their stories about how it affected them.
is Talk TV News.
Good afternoon, I'm Holly Hudson. The UN has warned Pakistan is facing a monsoon on steroids as it launched an appeal for more than £130 million of aid. Officials claim that one-third of the country has been completely submerged underwater and more than 1,100 people have died since mid-June as the country continues to deal with weeks of devastating flooding. This afternoon, Boris Johnson said the UK will send a fitting package of support to Pakistan and his deepest sympathies are with the country. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has promised that there will be more support coming for people struggling to pay their energy bills in the UK. Speaking on a visit to Dorset, Boris Johnson pledged that his successor will provide a further package for Brits facing an 80% rise in the price cap, but stressed that it will be a very difficult end to the year for many.
Whichever of the two candidates gets in next week, what the government is also going to do is provide a further package of support for helping people with the cost of energy. What we've got to do is get through the tough months. And I'm not going to, shrink from this. It is going to be tough in the months to come.
A woman has died after falling ill at Creamfields Festival. The 25-year-old from South Wales was taken to hospital on Friday night, but despite their best efforts, she passed away in the early hours of Tuesday. Her next of kin have been informed. And Ofcom has confirmed it's taking no further action over thousands of complaints of alleged misogynistic behaviour in this summer's Love Island. Announcing its decision, the regulator said negative behaviour was not shown in a positive light and it would not pursue the complaints, which reached nearly 7,500. That's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Welcome back, my friends, to Tice Talk. Well, that was, of course, Jeremy Kyle, who saw us out to the news. And Lynn from Staines has just messaged in. Jeremy, you're absolutely fantastic. Please come back so we can speak to you. Well, you won't have long to wait, we think, because Jeremy has got a new show, the time to be confirmed, but that will be sometime in the autumn. Another message here, love this, from Glenn, who says, Richard, my wife's from Coventry, and she definitely doesn't want the miserable, moaning wannabe royals in Coventry. Well, there we go. Anyway, talking of concerns and whether or not, we want people to arrive on our shores. We want them to arrive lawfully, legally, but what we don't want is illegal people arriving on our shores, as they have been in their thousands. I'm delighted now to be joined by Ben Habib, former MEP and chairman of Brexit Watch. Ben, a very good afternoon to you. How's it going? So, Ben, I broke this story a few weeks ago that 4 in 10 Albanians were coming across the channel. It now appears that it's about 6 in 10, according to the latest data. But the Home Secretary says, don't worry, it's all right. We've got a couple of Albanian deportation officers coming over with some biometric and fingerprint machines, and they'll be removed all very quickly. Is that reassuring to you?
Well, first of all, brilliant investigative journalism by you, Richard, to get to the bottom of a problem which actually had evaded the Home Office for years. I mean, it's extraordinary. And, at one level, it's terribly frightening that we've got so many Albanians coming to the country, so many people coming into the country illegally across the North Sea. I used to live in a little Hampshire village, which I think reputedly, it's hearsay and I can't back it up with facts, but apparently the population of 2,000 in the village in which I used to live made it the largest village in England. And we had 2,000 people come across one day last week. And at that kind of rate, the United Kingdom simply can't survive. And in a sense, it's kind of encouraging that these people are Albanian, because there's a sporting chance, perhaps, that the Home Office might now do its job and deport them back to Albania, where patently they're not at risk. But the issue... Sorry, go on, Richard. Yeah,
no, you were saying the issue is...
Well, I was going to say the issue isn't really about deportations, is it? And I know you're onto this as well, because I've heard you speak about it. It's not about what you do with them once they're here. It's preventing them getting here in the first place. It's where we're failing so badly is in border control. I mean, we don't have a deportation program that works. Rwanda clearly was never going to work, never will work. I'll be absolutely stunned if anyone ever gets deported to Rwanda. their exchequer is better off to the tune of £120 million. But I don't think we're going to be seeing any people going from the United Kingdom to Rwanda. But leaving that aside for a moment, what we need is not a convoluted, expensive, hard-to-impose deportation plan. What we need is robust management of our borders at sea. You know, that's it. It's simple.
Well, that's right, but it turns out in the news today that a company based on the Isle of Wight has earned about £2 million on a private contract to use 3 or 4 boats to help Border Force to pick up the boats and to act as sort of a glorified taxi service. Maybe you and I, Ben, maybe we're in the wrong business.
Well, you know, the heart of government policy on stopping this illegal migration was to create a deterrent. You know, that's the basis of the Rwanda plan. How do you create a deterrent? How do you even give the imagery of a deterrent? If you're providing a free taxi service, that's not a deterrent. That's an encouragement to come. Because once they enter British waters, they are safe. They know they're going to be taken safely onto a British boat and delivered safely onto UK shores.
My point and my real concern, which I wrote about and have spoken about, is, look, there are many, many fantastic, wonderful, delightful Albanian people, but there is a vicious, violent Albanian gang culture that's taken over the cocaine and the cannabis market here in the UK. And given that you can come lawfully via something like Wizz Air and a visa and come and work in the UK from Albania, then you sort of say, well, why would you come illegally at much greater cost? And therefore, that raises the concern that these are foot soldiers coming to help grow these gangs that are making vast sums of money that they're then essentially having to launder through various different types of industry in the UK, whether it's car washers, whether it's barbers, nail bars, who knows? I mean, they're potentially laundering billions of pounds of illegally gained profits, Ben.
Yeah, and, you know, and that no doubt is the tip of the iceberg. Goodness knows what else they're doing while they're here. And, you know, we've got an issue, I heard you discussing it just before I came on air, with law and order in the United Kingdom, with a police force that is politicised, and these boys will be taking advantage of it. Another great invitation: come to the United Kingdom, break our laws, you won't be prosecuted. You'll be given a free taxi service across the channel. You know, what kind of signals are we sending out as a country? It's an utter failure, as you said, I think, before I came on. It's an utter failure in leadership.
It is. Well, talking of leadership, just whilst I've got you, Ben, with the new leader to be announced finally, after we were bored of waiting throughout most of the summer, on Monday, most people think that it's going to be Liz Truss, but, you know, either or, I mean, their inbox is huge, not just on this issue, but the energy crisis. Do you have much hope in any form of optimism that they understand the gravity of the crisis?
Well, I would be despondent if Rishi won. You know, Rishi, for example, had a 10-point plan to deal with the illegal migrants across the North Sea. Any time you hear a politician say they've got a 10-point plan, you know they're not going to do anything. They're going to lose you in detail. They're not going to get a grip of the problem. So I'd be really despondent if Rishi won. I think he's continuity catastrophe as far as I'm concerned. But Liz, I have hope for Liz, because she's been very specific in what she's going to do. She's not talking in generality. She's talking specifically about reducing VAT on domestic fuel, about eliminating green taxes, about not spending, but actually giving people back their money so they can make their decisions on how best to deal with their problems. So I think, you know, I think she more or less gets it. And the other thing that I'm encouraged by, there are two other things about Liz that really encourage me. The first is that she's not a very good speaker. And I think, unlike her predecessor, who could mask all sorts of misdemeanors in his bombastic, bon vivant delivery of speech, she won't be able to do that. So she'll have to tell the truth. And that will be a remarkable step in of itself.
I think the country would prefer a good manager and operator running the country than a good campaigner. and I think that is right. But on the economy, I mean,
one more thing that encourages me. Yeah, sorry, you go ahead.
It's the energy bills that businesses are having to pay. You're probably seeing it in your business world. I mean, some of these numbers are just horrifically extraordinary.
They are horrific. I don't know if you saw, but overnight gas prices plummeted by 29% in the UK. That's kind of hot off the press, and that's because Germany has now replenished its reserves of gas for the winter. So the recent rises we've seen in gas prices has really been, again, down to Germany selfishly, replenishing its gas reserves. But I'm hopeful that signals the end of this rampant increase in gas prices. Oil prices have come down. Nevertheless, the winter ahead is going to be bleak for the UK. And whoever comes into number 10 is going to have just not just a problem with dealing with the issues that are going to face them, but a problem with dealing with the delivery of the messages that a good leader would honestly deliver to the people, because it's not going to be good going through winter, and people need to know the extent of the trouble which the country now faces. Only a good leader would have the courage to communicate that and communicate honestly their policies on how they're going to deliver, some amelioration from those problems.
Well, they won't have 100 days. They'll have about 20 or 30 days maximum to get that message across. Ben, thank you so much indeed for your thoughts there. That was Ben Habib, former MEP and chairman of Brexit Watch. We'll be taking your calls and your messages after the break. Stay with us here at Drive Time. It's Tice Talk. Welcome back, my friends. We are well through the second hour. It's just after 5:45 here on Talk TV. Lots of messages coming in. A great one here from Mitch, actually, just before we go to a couple of calls. Mitch says, Richard, a couple of suggestions to ease the cost of living. Firstly, there's no shortage of work at the moment, so how about those who are working but struggling just do a bit of extra work to earn more money? Well, I guess there will be people without question who are doing that 6 or 7 days a week. But the reality is, even then, you know, people are struggling. The second point's interesting as well. I know a bit about this. Secondly, 80% of pensioners are homeowners. So those who are struggling to make ends meet, if they've got mortgage-free properties, they could take out loans against their property to be paid when they die. Well, that is a scheme that some may be aware of, some may know, called equity release. And as Mitch says, what's the point of having wealth tied up in your home when you need cash to pay your bills now? And, you know, there are schemes out there, and no doubt people will be thinking about that. You do have to be very, very careful about it, because obviously there's a rate of interest to be paid, and whether that compounds until someone passes away, or whether you can pay it current. But all of those things, if you were to look at that, you'd need to talk to a really professional financial advisor. But I guess this is what, you know, everybody's got to look at, the different ways in order to get through this crisis. Thank you for that, Mitch. We're going to head up to Kidderminster, where Stuart is on the line, no doubt with some pearls of wisdom. Stuart, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I wouldn't say they're pearls of wisdom. I would say they're common sense. Earlier on,
well, we like a bit of that.
Pardon?
We like a bit of common sense.
Well, obviously, earlier you were saying about ways of saving money. Now, it's an issue, but I just don't know where it's going to end, because obviously we're pensioners. A lot of our friends are pensioners, worked all their lives and worrying about the cost of living. And those immigrants have come in. Now I'm going to worry about the cost of living or eating the houses in the winter. I mean, and those two who are standing for Prime Minister, they haven't really got a clue. It's been going on for years. They come out with all this rubbish, oh, we're going to do it. They haven't really got a clue. Nothing's going to happen. And this new venture of sending out a private company to transport them in, it's ludicrous, making the situation worse. We're an island, a small island. It's like having a boat. You obviously get so many people a boat, and when it gets overloaded, it sinks. That's what's going to happen to this country, and we shan't be able to really live with the amount that are coming in. Ordinary people will not be able to survive.
Stuart, I think you speak for so many millions of people who just think this is patently unfair, when British citizens, people like you who've worked all their life, saved up, trying to enjoy your retirement, and then wallop because of the negligence of our politicians and civil servants. And it's just not fair that those who are coming here illegally are then essentially reaping the rewards. Comfortable bed in a nice hotel, everything's paid for, you get given extra money. I mean, it's common sense says that is just not fair and is unfair.
No, it's something that I used to be quite a reasonable person, but now all I do is sit in front of a television, and my wife will tell you, I just moan, because all the issues that goes on every day, it's just getting on top of everybody. Talk about mental health issues, which back in the 60s, we were young, we had lots of issues. We didn't have any money. You had the wage packet at the end of the week, and just that was it, and you lasted on that. There's no sort of things about mental health. You just got on with life, but now everything's overtaken everybody. No wonder everybody's suffering with mental health. There's things that are going on now.
Completely, absolutely right. Well, keep listening, Stuart, because later on in the show we've got a fantastic segment with the great singer Kim Wilde, who was she was one of my stars when I was a teenager. You might remember her. She might have been someone you listened to back in the 80s or 90s. Stuart, thank you very much indeed for that call. Keep optimistic, Stuart. We've somehow got to find ways and ideas to be optimistic. So we're going to head from Kidderminster to Glasgow, where David is on the line. I think you might have called yesterday, David. We had a little discussion about rubbish.
Well, we did indeed, Richard. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm all right. What's the smell like in Glasgow today?
You know, a crazy thing about this bin strikes, they've now got more people in, obviously, to collect all the rubbish that's been lying there for days, which is costing them more money, and, there we go, sensible policy. Let's go and strike, let's employ more people to clean up rubbish, Anyway, on fracking, yes?
Yes, go for it.
it's a well-known fact that if we just extract 10% of the reserves that are there, it's enough to keep the gas usage in the UK for at least 50 years.
That's right. Yeah. It absolutely is. That there's huge reserves there.
Now, my only query is, or my only point I would make is, if this country is going to invest in another type of energy, right, it has to be done through a wholly publicly owned company that's not for profit. I don't want this country going back to the same position we're in today. I would like to see us going forward with fracking or whatever it happens to be, but with the control of a public company. You know, I don't know what your views are on that.
No, I think it's a really good point, because I mean, in a sense, it's not a new energy type. I mean, it's gas, but it just comes from the rocks as opposed from under the sea. But and it's owned by us all. That's the other thing. So it's partly to do with, I mean, the truth is governments are very bad at managing things, David, pretty good at funding things, not often, don't get that much value for money, but governments are very bad at managing things. I quite like what I call a 50-50 joint venture deal. So, for example, if you have companies, you could have the government on behalf of us, the taxpayer, owning 50%, but have the private sector, alongside maybe British pension funds on behalf of British pensioners, owning the other 50%. But keep the money and the wealth and the dividends and the profits here in the UK.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just thinking about it, because if you look at France as an example, with having 81% of EDF.
Yes,
just bought 19%.
Yes, they've actually they've gone 100%.
100%. And I would like to see the UK in that same position, that we've got an energy company producing fracking or hydrogen or whatever it happens to be, and we've got that flexibility to
No, I understand that, and what Norway did, and they were much smarter than we were sort of 50 years ago. All of the receipts received by the state, the tax receipts and the royalties from the oil from their element of the North Sea, they put into a sovereign wealth fund, and that now I think is one of the biggest in the world, with a value of over £1 trillion. And so that's how they kept the wealth alongside private sector management. That's how they did it. As an interesting issue. My only point is, David, that governments are bad at managing things, but you're quite right, we the people are sick of being ripped off.
A kind of separate company in that sense, properly managed and all that. Have you ever heard, out of interest, by the way, just with Shetland Charitable Trust?
I haven't.
Exactly the same thing as what you said. When the oil companies come into Shetland, the local community said, right, we want a share of the wealth. And that's exactly what they've got since way back in the 70s.
Interesting. I'll try and look at that. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Brilliant. David, great call. Thank you very much indeed, and I hope things get better with the bin men in Scotland. Meanwhile, we're going to head from Scotland to the glorious, wonderful, picturesque county of Cumbria, where Chris is on the line. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, Richard.
How are you?
It's lovely to talk to you.
And to you too.
Very first time, I've got to say.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for calling. Thanks for listening. What's on your mind?
Well, much the same as everybody else, I suppose. But having heard that gentleman you've just been speaking to about fracking and so forth, I was just going to say I'm up for that. We don't seem to have any energy supplies in hand that we really need to have. Our government's let us down on that one, I would say. I'm a pensioner. I live on my own. My partner, poor fella, he's in a nursing home. He has dementia, and it's getting worse.
Oh, I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, he was living at home with me, but then it was decided it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And I like most people. I've got my problems, and I get that. I'm very lucky to have good friends and family.
Well, that's fantastic. And
and hearing you speak, you've got such a reassuring. I'll get my tongue round it in a minute. A reassuring tone of voice, and I don't just mean that. I really do.
Well, that's very kind of you, Chris. Well, thank you for that. And I think the point on energy, and the thing is, cheap energy literally has enabled billions of people around the whole world to live happier, more prosperous and much, much longer lives. And our politicians have failed to remember that crucial fact. And some people have actually been a bit concerned, Chris, that if we do the shale gas industry, that too much money will sort of go to the production companies. But there's ways round that. You know, we can have a big stake in it, as I was just touching with David there. Local people in the area can get massive discounts on fuel bills, and I've had loads of messages. Would you support that? I mean, if there was a shale gas well near you and you got a 25-40% discount on your energy bill, would that be attractive?
Absolutely. Anything like that would be fine by me. Yeah, when you're on the pension, it's not great some of the time. You know, you manage to eke out as best you can. Luckily, there's just me. I haven't got children to look after. I have grandchildren, but they're away with the parents, so that's fine. Everybody's looking out for everybody else.
Yeah,
so.
well, that's great that you've got some children and grandchildren to think about and to look out for each other. Chris, great call. Thank you so much for calling in. That was Chris with a first-time call from the amazing, wonderful county of Cumbria, where actually there's talk about a new coal mine. I would support that. High-quality British coal. Why would we want to import dirty, brown Russian coal when we've got fantastic coal, again, under our feet, folks? It's ours. It belongs to all of us. Extraordinary. Anyway, stay with us. After the news, we are going to be talking to Ashok Kumar about labour relations, the state of the strikes across the country. He is a professor of political economy at Birkbeck. He may or may not agree with me. Don't go anywhere. It's Tice Talk. It is, of course, Talk TV.
on TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Holly Hudson. An inquest into the death of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell has heard how a police officer scooped her up and ran in an attempt to save her. Olivia died after being shot in the chest by a masked gunman at her home in Liverpool last Monday. The hearing was also told that the officer tried to use his hand to cover her wound, but her heart had stopped by the time they reached Alder Hey Children's Hospital. Police are still searching for the schoolgirl's killer, and the coroner reiterated appeals for anyone with information to come forward. The UN has warned Pakistan is facing a monsoon on steroids as it launched an appeal for more than £130 million of aid. Officials claim that 1/3 of the country has been completely submerged underwater, and more than 1,100 people have died since mid-June as the country continues to deal with weeks of devastating flooding. This afternoon, Boris Johnson said the UK will send a fitting package of support to Pakistan, and his deepest sympathies are with the country. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has promised there will be more support coming for people struggling to pay their energy bills in the UK, but stressed that it will be a very difficult end to the year for many.
Whichever of the two candidates gets in next week, what the government is also going to do is provide a further package of support for helping people with the cost of energy. What we've got to do is get through the tough months. And I'm not going to, shrink from this. It is going to be tough in the months to come.
Bristol Rovers say they're deeply saddened to hear the death of their former academy player who was stabbed at Notting Hill Carnival. Takeo Nempard, also known as rapper Takur Stretch, died in hospital after being attacked last night. And the jury in the Ryan Giggs trial have been told that the judge will now accept a majority verdict. The jurors have been deliberating for over 16 hours but have so far failed to reach a decision they all agree on. They'll resume discussions again tomorrow. Giggs denies all charges against him. Well, those are your latest news headlines. Still to come, your TalkSport update, but first your weather with Joe Wheeler.
Times Food and Drink sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello there. Well, the dry, fine weather stays with us through the next few days, but it does look as though it'll all change at the weekend when it turns rather wet and windy. But for the time being, plenty of fine weather around, clear skies, particularly out through western areas, more in the way of cloud elsewhere, and that cloud giving 1 or 2 showers, but really it's a hit and miss affair. It's going to be quite a chilly night over parts of the north, temperatures low enough for a touch of frost over parts of Scotland, whereas it stays fairly mild down towards the south, but we may well see some mist and fog forming around the dawn. Now that should clear quite readily through tomorrow. Again, plenty of sunshine to come, and temperatures still up to around 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, so feeling very pleasant indeed. Still the risk of a few showers cropping up, particularly through parts of the East Anglia, along those eastern coasts and up into parts of northeastern England, maybe 1 or 2 of them making their way inland through the course of the day. So the emphasis on dry weather, but if you think we have it dry, a storm chaser managed to capture the moment he fled from an approaching dust storm yesterday. The monstrous Haboob, as it's known, swept over farmland as a line of storms swept across the northwest of Texas. Impressive but terrifying.
Times Food and Drink sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello again. Cameron Norrie has cruised to victory in the first round of the US Open. He won his first set in just 18 minutes before easing to a straight set victory over France's Benoit Paire to secure his place in the second round. Meanwhile, Emma Raducanu has said she'll be using positive energy to approach the defence of her US Open title. She faces France's Alizé Cornet in her first round draw, which will get underway at around midnight. Former England goalkeeper David James has told TalkSport Scott Parker was in trouble when he said out loud how much his squad would struggle in the Premier League. Parker is the first top-flight manager to be sacked this season. Co-owner of Bournemouth, Maxim Demin, said those at the club must show respect and belief to each other. Bournemouth were beaten 9-0 by Liverpool at the weekend, and David James, who also played for Bournemouth, says managers deserve more time, but maybe there was more to the sacking.
I would have thought that they might have given him a little bit more time. I mean, 9-0's obviously not a good scoreline in anyone's books, but at the same time, it's very early in the season. So I can only imagine, and that's all I can do, is that there was a little bit more to it than just that result.
And Cameron Smith is the latest golf star to join Saudi-funded Live Series, becoming their highest-ranked recruit. The Open champion and world #2 has been confirmed for the next tournament in Boston in a few days' time. Speaking to Golf Digest, he confirmed that money was definitely a factor in his decision to leave the PGA Tour. That's all for now. I'll be back with more in half an hour.
Danny in Ipswich, you're on the air. Danny, good morning.
I'm sitting here with my little Chihuahua dog on the sofa.
What a ridiculous thing to say. You do talk nonsense. Get to the point. So you don't like Boris Johnson, right?
No, I do not.
And a very good early evening to one and all. Yes, it's just gone 6 o'clock. Some people might be reaching for the bottle, some people might still be having a cup of tea, but it's that sort of time of the day where you're not quite sure which. We've had some great messages and calls and chat so far throughout the show, and a great one here from Rob, who is on the road. Hi, Tice man, been listening all day, and it hasn't been mentioned, so I thought I'd let you know, thanks Rob, that he's a long-distance courier, and fuel went up by between 5 and 10 pence across the board overnight. I wasn't actually aware of that. I've been quietly noticing fuel prices drifting slowly down, that's a bit surprising if they've gone up overnight. Let's hope that is very short-lived. And then loads of great, really quite sort of thoughtful tweets coming in. One here from Leah, who says, Richard, I think this crisis will genuinely test credibility in the ethics of a free market economy, especially when the energy companies' profits are so enormous. How do those who believe in capitalism effectively stand against the growing calls for nationalisation and big state economics? Well, I think that's a perfect tweet to lead into my next guest, because he may have some thoughts and some clear views about that, because Ashok Kumar, who's an associate professor of political economy at Birkbeck University, and is also a specialist in labour relations. Ashok, a very good evening. Thanks for joining us on Tice Talk. Well, I mean, that in itself, you know, we wouldn't 6 or 12 months ago have had a tweet like that. It's, in a sense, it's remarkable, but it is part of a discussion that the country, I think, needs to have.
No, I agree. I mean, look, the current system that we exist under, the capitalist mode of production, is seeing an increasing amount of resources and land and value and profits and wages and all of the resources in society being concentrated into fewer and fewer hands. And people were kind of okay with that. That's been happening actually since the emergence of capitalism, and really accelerated from the crisis of the 1970s under an era that's been called neoliberalism. But now, at least in the sort of most advanced capitalist countries like Britain, the US, continental Europe, there's a sense that, wait, these profits are coming at the cost of our ability to feed ourselves, feed our children. And you've seen an erosion of the welfare state as well. Like before the class compromise, the way they saved capitalism from itself was to create a welfare state and say, okay, we'll give you enough for you to just eke out an existence and to keep and stabilize the system. Now they've eroded that as well across the advanced capitalist world. So it's really coming to fruit, the real contradictions for people in their everyday lives, and they're kind of questioning the ideology of capitalism, yeah.
And in a sense, you know, sometimes it's good to have this debate. What's tragic is that it's been forced on us by events. You know, look, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a businessman, but also I've actually been saying for well over a year that in certain monopolistic style markets, particularly in what I call critical national infrastructure, and obviously there's been a lot of chat about water companies, energy is a key thing. I've got a slightly sort of what I think is a win-win solution, Ashok, which is almost like a sort of halfway house, because for me the truth is governments are very bad at managing things. They're quite good at being able to organise the money for things, but they've got a pretty bad track record of managing things. The win-win solution is where, in some of these industries, the government might own, let's say, 50%, and then, for example, British pension funds, on behalf of British pensioners, own the balance 50%, with private sector management doing a good job of running it. Therefore, when the company has a good year, the taxpayer benefits alongside the pension funds, and if it has a bad year, well, everyone has to take it on the chin.
Well, I mean, what we have right now, and that's an interesting proposal, Richard, but what we have right now is where, private industry is generating profits for themselves, but then they socialize all the costs. And so they get bailouts during crises. You see that with energy companies. You see that with the financial services sector. You see that with transport. They were basically collapsing under COVID. And so if you look at places where they've actually nationalized these sectors, which are, like you say, monopolistic firms, they're not creating innovations. There's no innovations being created in these. They're just siphoning out public resources. You look at transport, for example. And since the last year, they've had $500 million in surpluses that they've given shareholders. But you've seen fares increase by 40% from 2011 to 2019. So fares are increasing, wages are frozen, and profits are being siphoned off to shareholders. You're not really seeing innovations happening in these sectors. So,
I'll pick up on that. There was a lot of innovation in transport because I was a beneficiary of it post the cold, dull, dry sandwiches of British Rail. I mean, people like Virgin Rail actually did do a good job, but essentially transport's effectively been nationalised in the last couple of years. It just hasn't, people just haven't really been honest about that. But that's the reality, isn't it? Look, I think far too often, though, actually, the private sector does a better deal against the government in some of these areas and ends up with a much better deal. And it's how you share the cake and create a sort of a proper incentive structure. For me, the big issue is that the overall, the personal tax threshold at which people start paying income tax is way, way, way too low. Income tax was originally a tax for the rich. It's now become a tax that hits the poor hardest.
Well, I mean, it's certainly the case, especially if we talk about regressive taxation, so some forms of property taxation, the way that councils make money, fines, VAT. These are all highly regressive, and they should be abolished, of course. But then also income tax threshold at the top needs to increase if we're going to generate the revenue to actually have a society that's able to distribute those resources so that we can have, get ourselves out of the crisis. Like the crisis that we have right now, and I'm sure your listeners know this, but it's a supply-side crisis. It's,
yes.
It's an inflationary crisis that's tied to supply, not demand.
What solution would you like to the energy crisis? Because I put up mine last week. What's your solution? Because, we need some answers pretty rapidly.
Well, look, I think that nationalization obviously has to be on the table. You're seeing, the biggest companies in Britain profiting at extortionate rates, where you see in continental Europe and France specifically. You're not seeing that. You're seeing caps happening. The second thing you have to do is actually it's a crisis that's affecting the entire economy. So if you look at forms of essential sectors like the rental market, for example, or housing, or food, or energy. These areas there needs to be price caps. Firstly, there has to be price caps, because if there's not price caps, what you're going to see is something that's a supply side crisis is going to become a demand side crisis. And that demand side crisis is going to expedite or accelerate a recession, a really severe and long-standing recession. So if we want to prevent that and also help people feed themselves and not die in the cold this winter, so there's a human element, there's an economic element. The good part is they're both coming together, and that is you put price caps and you put limits on 40% increases on executive pay. That the S&P 500 saw 73% increase in profits from 2019.
So my answer, Ashok, in my view, we're literally in a global energy war, and I think the government in wartime has to adopt a sort of warlike solutions, and actually for energy. And again, as an entrepreneur, it pains me to sort of say this, but I do think that the answer with the energy producers, not the retail suppliers, but the producers, is to have essentially a cap at the 2021 average price that they received for their gas or their wind electricity generated, when actually they were making reasonable profits but not windfall profits.
Yeah, that's an obvious solution. Any political figure who's not suggesting that isn't actually serious about the pain that people will suffer this winter. Of course, there needs to be a cap. That goes without saying. But the cap is kind of a Band-Aid on something that's a severe fissure. If someone sort of has a massive cut, you don't just stick a Band-Aid on there. It's a short-term solution. You need an actual systematic structural solution to this structural problem that's not going to end this year or next year.
That's exactly, that's the supply side crisis, and that's going to take years.
Yeah, the supply side crisis, but also the fact that, for example, the biggest energy provider, energy in the country, just posted 2 weeks ago, $3 billion in profits this year, the highest they've had in decades. that they're able to profit that level is money that's going out of people's pockets. The things that we have control over, the actual people that are delivering the energy, making enormous profits off the public, needs to be stopped now, and that happens by taking back those essential resources that should be in the public's hands anyways.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with with monopoly activities, then there should be, without question, an element of public ownership. We want to get a win-win.
Entrepreneurs are supposed to go out there and innovate, not just become parasitic and take public resources. And that's parasitic. That's not entrepreneurship. That's just being a parasite on public resources.
And there's far too much of that. On Ashok, we don't agree on everything, but on that, we do agree. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts there. That's Ashok Kumar, who's an associate professor at Birkbeck University. We've just got time for a quick call before the break, and also Sir Simon has asked me, Tice, have you got a full-time gig on Talk Drive then? No, I am standing in. I'm the warm-up act, is how I like to describe myself, for Vanessa Feltz, who starts next Monday. I think I'm right in saying. Patricia is in Staffordshire. How are you?
Oh, hi, not too bad, thanks, Richard.
Good, thanks for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Yeah, it was a couple of things, really. One was about an incident that happened very close to me, probably about 3 or 4 doors down, a few months ago. And the other was a question, really, about, the police station, what's been happening to them. But shall I tell you about the incident first, and then...
Yeah, go for it. We've just got a couple of minutes.
OK. Well, what it was, there was in the papers, it was reported as a murder. Now, I was told that it was outside somebody's house, and then I was told that they were fighting, this chap had a heart attack. I wasn't aware of that. I came home one evening quite late and found some broken keys off the key fob on my wheelie bin. So I thought nothing more of it, and I thought, well, I'll ring Lost and Found. So first of all, 101, I was behind 30 callers, and then 15 callers, and then... So eventually I got through to them. They said, oh, we don't do Lost and Found anymore. Try the internet. So the next day, they got door-to-door policemen coming round to see if anybody had seen anything about this death. And for the first, I said, oh, no, I didn't see anything. I wasn't here. Then I got in the car, drove to the end, saw a policeman standing there behind they got some barriers around. So I thought, oh, the keys. I didn't tell them about the keys, because I thought if they were there and they were broken, were there anything to do with this fight, you see?
And were they interested in what you had to help?
No, not really.
Oh, dear.
I said, well, I said to this policeman, I explained, I said, well, just in case, can I give them to you? And he said, no, not really. And it was more or less saying the same thing.
Pretty troubling and sort of very anxious time for you.
Well, it was in a way, because I wasn't fully aware what had probably happened there. I think somebody told me it was a fight that had moved on from somewhere else and moved into the street or on the... that's why they were going house to house, you see. Yeah,
no, I understand, Patricia. I unfortunately, because of time only, Patricia, I've got to go to the break. But I would say stay vigilant and stay alert and keep in touch with the authorities. Thank you so much for Patricia. We are heading to the break, and after that we're going to be talking to Charlie Ray about, yes, you guessed it, Meghan. It's Tice Talk. Welcome back, my friends. Good evening. We're well into the third hour of Tice Talk. We've been talking about a whole range of things throughout the show. Loads of great messages and calls coming in. One here says, bring back cash. We had a great chat about cash yesterday. I think people rather like cash. It's good to have a 20 quid note in the back of the pocket. Jill has just tweeted in, so that's great, she goes. Germany, who are 70% dependent on Russia for gas, have replenished their gas stock for this winter, whilst we in the UK have done nothing to secure our gas, and we don't depend on Russia. There's some truth to that. One of the reasons that we haven't done much is because we don't have any gas storage anymore, because guess what? Yes, our politicians got rid of our gas storage. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Nick Clegg. Thanks for that, David Cameron, and others, including Ed Davey. Honestly. Well, let's try and be optimistic. Let's talk about something positive, shall we? So, in which case, we'll go to Charlie Ray, who is, of course, the former royal editor for The Sun and a great contributor to Talk TV. Charlie, good evening, good afternoon. We should just reflect on some warm and friendly comments from Meghan Markle, shouldn't we?
Well, good afternoon, Richard. I mean, I'm at a loss to know where to start with this one. I mean, for the best part of 2.5 years, we've had Meghan and at times Harry as well taking single pot shots at the royal family and the press and everything else. Now, yesterday in a 6,400 word rambling interview, she's taken a machine gun out and she's shot at everything. I mean, it's patently ridiculous. And some of the things that she said, I'm loath to call her a liar, but she's certainly got some strange way of looking at the truth. I mean, if you take just one example, where she says that she could never have done the school run in the UK because the British media, those nasty people like me, would have 40 photographers stationed outside a gate in a pen taking pictures. Well, that doesn't happen. You know, William and Catherine take the 3 children to school quite happily. They don't get bothered.
They seem to manage just fine.
They manage absolutely fine. And there's rules in place about actually taking pictures of children. Not just royal children, but children, you know, general children, normal people's children. And you can't just go up and snap them for no reason. And the pictures that we get from about the royal children are pictures that they themselves give the press.
Yeah, Charlie, what do you think's her objective? I mean, if you sort of, you know, put all our angst aside about how she's behaving, what's she trying to achieve? Why does she think that what she's doing is smart from anybody's point of view?
I don't know, Richard. I mean, why compare yourself to Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in a small cell in Robben Island, and she didn't? I mean, she was a normal girl, brought up, went into acting, reasonably successful. I would have said a C-list actress, but did quite well. Along comes a prince, and she goes on about how, you know, the only time anybody recognised I was black was when I was married, I married Prince Harry. It's patently ridiculous, all this sort of stuff. And I'd like to think that the royal family will only take so much of this rubbish, and then they will hit back.
Because you've actually reminded us of, you know, the truth is that she was quite successful in her career, and she went, you know, in a sense, she grew and grew with ever more successes in her career, and went arguably right to the very pinnacle, joining the British royal family. So you could say that she'd been quite smart up until that moment, and then she seems to have sort of basically blown the whole thing up and thrown it all away, and no one can I can't understand what's her objective.
I think she thinks she's bigger than the royal family, and you know, she isn't. I mean, she was a small cog in that royal family. And at the early time, at the beginning, she was a very popular member of the royal family. And quite rightly so. Everybody loved her. She was a breath of fresh air coming into the royal family. I mean, I now believe that they should strip her of the Duchess of Sussex title, because if she doesn't want to be linked to the royal family, then she doesn't need the Duchess of Sussex title. She can be Mrs. Harry Windsor or whatever.
And it's so tragic to get to that. It really is, because it's so damaging for them as a family, but much more importantly for our royal family, you know, which the vast majority of the country loves and adores.
Sure.
And is that technically possible? Is it is that a matter for the Queen herself?
That is a matter for the Queen herself. It is technically possible that they could decide that, well, you know, you don't want to be part of the royal family and even sort of that far away from it. Then don't be a royal duchess. It's that simple. And this is the problem. They are trading in on their links to the royal family while starting to shoot at them.
Charlie, I was talking to Jeremy about an hour ago. Jeremy Kyle. Are we ourselves in the media and the press? Are we guilty, actually, of accentuating this issue? If we literally just snubbed them and put them into I've got a listener in Coventry who's not very happy with me, but put them into Coventry and just ignored them.
Well, I don't think you can ignore them. They are a story. It is our job to report what they say and do. We may not like it, what they say and do, but we still got a job and a duty to report what's going on. And when you consider that what they're saying is hurtful towards the royal family, I mean, this thing about, you know, Harry has told her that he's lost his father, which is, I just think is ridiculous. I mean, that is extremely hurtful for any father to hear. And the one thing about Prince Charles is he is a loving father of both his sons, no matter what Harry's done.
Absolutely right. Charlie, thank you so much indeed for those thoughts. Catastrophic interview by Meghan Markle. Absolutely catastrophic. That was Charlie Ray, the former Royal Sun editor, with his thoughts. Thank you for that. We're going to head down to Dorset to hear the thoughts of Derek. Good evening, Derek.
Hello, Richard. Listen, I'm old. If I come back as Oliver Cromwell, you'll be the next Prime Minister.
Oh, bless you. We've just got a minute, Derek. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, OK. Britain at the moment is like that aircraft carrier that couldn't even take... thanks to the useless politicians we have in this country. Now, law and order, I spent 39 years in the prison service dealing with criminals. When you've got time, I'll tell you how to deal with young criminals. I got an award for the rehabilitation programs I set up, and I was strict, fair and firm. And would you believe the Borstal I was at, and I'm not boasting, they had a collection for me when I left.
Well, there you are. So they respected you. That's the point, isn't it, Derek? I've got to head to the news, Derek, but thank you very much. That's what we need. We need a bit of respect and some firm clarity. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. You've been listening all through this afternoon to Tice Talk here at Talk TV.
I'm Tom Newton-Dunn, and this is Talk TV. The most memorable moment in my career, without sounding completely conceited, has to be interviewing President Trump in the Oval Office in the White House. Particularly, the little red button he had on his desk. I had no idea what it did as the interview went on. I wondered more and was going to launch a nuclear strike on North Korea or open up a shark pit that I'd then fall into. Turned out he pressed it right at the end of the interview, and in walked a butler with a tray carrying a Diet Coke. It was a Diet Coke button.
This is Talk TV News.
Good evening, I'm Holly Hudson. An inquest into the death of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell has heard how a police officer scooped her up and ran in an attempt to save her. Olivia died after being shot in the chest by a masked gunman at her home in Liverpool last Monday. The hearing was also told that the officer tried to use his hand to cover her wound, but her heart had stopped by the time they reached Alderhay Children's Hospital. Police are still searching for the schoolgirl's killer, and the coroner reiterated appeals for anyone with information to come forward. The UN has warned Pakistan is facing a monsoon on steroids as it launched an appeal for more than £130 million of aid. Officials claim that 1/3 of the country has been completely submerged underwater, and more than 1,100 people have died since mid-June as the country continues to deal with weeks of devastating flooding. This afternoon, Boris Johnson has said the UK will send a fitting package of support to Pakistan, and his deepest sympathies are with the country. Bristol Rovers say they're deeply saddened to hear of the death of their former academy player who was stabbed at Notting Hill Carnival. Takeo Nembhard, also known as rapper Takur Stretch, died in hospital after being attacked last night. The jury in the Ryan Giggs trial have been told that the judge will now accept a majority verdict. The jurors have been deliberating for over 16 hours but have so far failed to reach a decision they all agree on. They'll resume discussions again tomorrow. Giggs denies all charges against him. And Ofcom has confirmed it's taking no further action over thousands of complaints of alleged misogynistic behaviour in this summer's Love Island. Announcing its decision, the regulator said negative behaviour was not shown in a positive light. Nearly 7,500 complaints were made about the show. That's all for now. We'll have more later this evening.
Welcome back, my friends, to Tice Talk. We're into the last half hour of the show, and I promised you something special, something different, didn't I, at the top of the show? And yes, it's that time. It is, of course, when we should talk about a fantastic new tour, the Greatest Hits Tour, that is about to be embarked upon by none other than my next guest, the amazing, the wonderful Kim Wilde, who is on the line now. Kim, a very good evening to you. How are you?
Oh, I'm really good, thank you. Nice to talk to you, Richard.
It's nice to talk to you. I have to say, this takes me back, because I'm just a couple of years younger than you, but you were literally, in my teenage years, you were one of my idols and heroines, and here I am now talking to you about your incredible career. I mean, so this tour, this Greatest Hits Tour, you must be, after so long, sort of, you know, your last tour, I think, was 2019. It must be very exciting to get back on the road.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You know, we've been doing some 80s festivals throughout the summer, which have been wonderful. But to go out on my own tour is great. Obviously, it was delayed from the pandemic. The album came out, The Greatest Hits, and celebrating 40 years of my career.
It's almost best not to say that, just celebrating a few years.
Yeah, 40 years is a long old time, but not as long as my dad's, which is still going strong, I have to add. So yeah, here I go out on tour just in a short week or so. I start in Newcastle, up at the Sage there, and I end up at the lovely old Palladium in London. Do 11 shows, and we're doing my Greatest Hits, and I'm very excited.
I mean, it's a really, really busy tour. You're doing 11 shows in literally 17 days. I mean, it's absolutely full on. So, and you've got. Tell us about the support you've got, the support act.
Yeah, China Crisis are going to come along with us, so it's a strong 80s flavour the whole evening. Obviously, the majority of my hits were throughout that fantastic decade, and we're going to really celebrate it in large style. I've got a couple of great drummers. There's 8 of us on stage. My brother's on there with me. My niece is doing backing vocals. So if you're thinking about going out for a meal before and come along to just put your feet up and have a nice evening's entertainment, then this is not the show for you.
Then in which case, forget it. So it's a proper family gig. I mean, you've got everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with my brother since Kids in America. You know, he co-wrote it with my father. My niece has been touring with me for over 10 years. And many members of my family love music, are musicians, are writers. My son is a singer-songwriter.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's just in the genes, I think.
It clearly is in the genes. And I mean, you had so many albums, such success. And I was reminded, you were in 1983... you won the Brit Award for the Best British Female Solo Artist. Can't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great night because Paul McCartney was there, which was pretty amazing, and I was sat right next to him and Linda McCartney.
Wow.
And Linda McCartney, I was a huge fan of Linda as well as Paul, and actually went and had my mullet haircut because of Linda McCartney. I saw a great picture of her on the back of Band on the Run album, and so that's where I got the famous mullet idea from. Fantastic.
Well, you'll be thrilled to know, Kim, whilst we've been talking, I mean, you know, your supporters are listening to this show. Nikki is in Newcastle. She says she's excited. She's got her ticket to your show at the Sage Gateshead. First time for her to see you in concert. So there we are. And so there are still some tickets available, are they, for various of the shows?
Oh, I think there are, but not lots and lots, of course.
So folks, get busy,
get
on the
your
line.
tickets before they sell out. And yeah, we're getting a great reaction to the tour so far. But I'm sure there's a few tickets left.
I'm sure, absolutely fantastic. So, I'm gonna definitely look at later in the month at the London Palladium. I'll see if I can come to that. And are there any other sort of surprises on the stage or the lighting? Any sort of thing you can just tease us with?
Well, I have had some really rather fab costumes made.
Wow.
I was never big on costumes in the past. I was a bit of a jeans or leather jacket and T-shirt kind of girl. But I've kind of splashed out on some really fabulous looking looks for the tour. And we have an amazing lighting guy. We have an amazing band. We have put a lot of work into creating the set, and it's may have a few secret special guests that may turn up throughout the tour.
There you are, folks, some secret special guests. And Kim, let us into a secret. I mean, how nervous do you get each night before a gig?
Well, I just get really excited. I don't get nervous. I just feel the adrenaline. I mean, the adrenaline just kicks in, and starts around lunchtime, a couple of hours. Just before I go on, it gets really intense, and it carries me through the show. So I don't get nervous. I love performing. It's one of the most enjoyable things I can do.
And that sort of shows in the enthusiasm and sort of the action. And then afterwards, are you completely shattered and exhausted?
Yeah, I am, because I give absolutely everything to every show, and. For me, when I walk on stage, it's sacred time. It's sacred, and every person out there has bought a ticket to come and see me, and I just give them all of my day. I prepare myself throughout the day, and I do very little interaction with others. I keep all my energy locked inside to give to those who've come to see me. So I really do give myself completely.
That's absolutely fantastic, Kim. Well, hopefully a few more tickets will be sold as a result of this, and I shall definitely check out the diary for one of those later shows, because I'm sure it's going to be a huge, massive... and I love the idea that it's a sort of family endeavour, and you're at the heart of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my father's still he still does loads of gigs, loads more than I do, at 83. So I've got a lot to live up to, but he really inspires me.
That's fantastic. Well, you've got loads and loads still to give, more albums and more concerts to come. Kim, thank you so much for joining us on Tice Talk on Talk TV to share that with us. That was Kim Wilde. Look on the website, folks. Book some tickets. That will be an amazing show. We've just got time before the break to go up to Nottingham, where Steve is on the line. Steve, are you tempted? Are you going to sign up for the show?
Hello.
Hi there, Steve. Are you tempted to sign up to go and see Kim Wilde?
Definitely. With me and the family, I'll sign up, yeah.
Good man. Excellent. What's on your mind, Steve?
Right, I want to talk about the fracking issue, Richard.
Great, go for it. We've got 2 minutes.
Right, I worked at a local colliery in Nottingham in the mid-70s to early 80s. And during that period, there was investment in pumping out the gas from the coal seams up to the pit surface and into a specialised boiler system that used the gas from the mine to heat the showers for the men to use after their shift.
Right. Sounds very sensible.
Of course. So what's all the issue about fracking? We should be doing it straight away.
Well, exactly. I mean... You understand the mining industry. You understand the opportunities, the jobs, and the wealth that it creates for just the investment in the local area.
Exactly. We've got wrong people in government. We've got the people that don't understand. They want people you've had on your show today talking about the police and everything. running government.
Well, it's at the moment, it's just not good enough, is it, Steve? Because some of this stuff is, it's actually not rocket science. It's basic common sense.
It's basic common sense. It's people that don't understand, that's running government, they don't understand the local issues. The gas has been there for years and years.
Steve, well, that is a wise, experienced voice of reason and common sense for anybody with any doubts about shale gas and fracking and the opportunities for levelling up. Steve, great call. Thank you very much. Stay with us. We'll be taking more calls after the break. Before, at the top of the hour, it is, of course, the news desk. And then, yes, 8 o'clock Uncensored with Jeremy Kyle. It's Tice Talk on Talk TV. Welcome back, my friends, to Tice Talk. We're into the last 15 minutes before it's the news desk at 7. Anna's asked, are you doing drive time permanently now, Richard? No, I'm just the stand-in between David Bull. He's taking a well-earned holiday, and next week it's Vanessa Feltz. But tomorrow and Thursday, between 4 and 7, I will be joined by Isabel Oakeshott, my partner. So we will be co-hosting the show. Let's hope we don't have a row and fall out. I mean, we're having to find out who's the boss. Maybe that'll be the question. Who do you think's the boss between us? But anyway, that'll be a bit of fun over the next 2 nights. That's Isabel Oakeshott and myself. Just before we take a couple of calls, a couple of tweets here. One from Gary, who's got a couple of questions. One was about the Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund. Gary says they had a similar amount of oil and reserves as gas reserves as we did. but the reason they have a bigger sovereign wealth fund is they've only got 5 million people. But actually, what they did was they put it into a fund and they saved it, and they only took out the dividends, whereas we, in the UK, we blew it all. Gary then asks about my energy plan, which is a good question, but I have got the answer. So, Richard, do you want to tell the Saudis they can only sell their oil at 2021 prices, or do you want me to do it? Even if we could cap the price, who says they wouldn't just leave it in the ground? The point is, Gary, about my scheme is, of course, you can only legislate to do that in UK territory for UK assets that are in the ground, not obviously things that you're buying from elsewhere. But actually, you could also say to UK producers of these energy assets within the UK territories only, you can say to them, if you reduce your supply, guess what? You're going to be nationalised. At which point, the one thing you can be sure of is they won't reduce their supply. So look, it's doable, it's an uncomfortable, it's a difficult situation. No one who's an entrepreneur wants to do that sort of thing, who believes in free markets, but we are in a global energy war, and in a warlike situation, you have to act in that sort of way in order to protect the people. This is about protecting the people. Anyway, I hope that helps. No doubt Gary may come back at me. But let's head down to Kent, where Janet is on the line. Hi, Janet.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call.
Great pleasure. What's on your mind?
Well, energy. I agree with everything I've heard from the two programmes I've caught of yours. What I'd like to happen from the 1st of October is that for all UK territory licences for extraction and collection, so North Sea oil, wind farms, that we have open book accounting for the 2019-20 tax figures, all producers, all distributors, and we basically strip out all standing charges, subsidies, decouple, cross-funding, speculation, green taxes, so that we actually come to what the core cost for energy price is. So basic cost, the 2019-20 repair and maintenance bill plus 2% for the producers and ditto for distributors. So basically, that's the
You'd like to sort of get to the real transparent of what it costs, what's the profit?
What's the cost? Then the 2019 repair and maintenance bill to keep it plus 2% profit, because everyone's got to make a little bit of profit.
That's right.
So
yeah, they try and make a lot more than 2%.
Oh, I know, but this is my thoughts, and I worked it up after your Sunday sermon at the weekend, so it's back of a fag packet, though I don't smoke. So basically, you've got your core caustics for basic, and then for all small businesses, again, we go back to 2019 figures, and 50% is at basic rate, 30% is at modest rate, which I'll come on to, and then 20% is sort of the luxury rate of their 2019.
Right.
And that's for all your small businesses. Very, very worried about fertiliser plants and CO2 plants, because otherwise we're not going to have feed and fodder. That's also for GP surgeries, NHS, council, etc. All the lot, really. So it's everybody.
So you've basically you've got a variant of my plan.
Well, unfortunately, I haven't caught your plan. I've only caught what you've spoken about.
Okay, right. Yeah,
I've been that busy.
What I said on Sunday was a sort of summary of my plan, but it's on our website. So you want to see open book accounting. Then what? Just quickly, because I've got to go to the next call in a second, Janet.
Okay. So you take a standard terrace house that's got loft insulation and curtains with 2 adults, 2 kids, and whatever it takes to heat that to 20 degrees C, plus a minimal lifestyle, not Spartan, but shower every day, 20 degrees C. So basically, that everyone gets that basic level of cost, basic amount, whatever it is at cost. Even if you live in a 3-bedroom, 2 reception, you still get that, because you could live in one room downstairs and take bottles to bed. And then basically the next level, which is sort of your modest, that's your add-ons. And obviously for all the registered disabled and elderly, they get benefits for whatever they need, because they're going to need warmer. Then the next level 3 is luxury, and next level 4 is, worldly or
I've got it.
profligate.
It sounds... I mean, essentially, you're controlling the cost of... you're controlling the pricing. It sounds a little bit complicated, but I get where you're coming from, Janet. Ultimately, they were making reasonable profits before this year, and it should go back to that. Brilliant call, Janet. Thank you very much for your thoughts in there. We are going to try and just fit in a couple more calls, so we'll quickly head down to London, where Stuart's on the line. Hi there.
Hello there, Richard. What Norman Brennan said was, half right. What he missed out was, it doesn't matter if you've got 1 million police officers on the streets. If they go to court with a knife or whatever, they're straight out again. It's like a revolving door. It's just no point. That's why my cousin is a police officer. He's so fed up. He's packing it up. He said, we are totally demoralised. We arrest them, they let them straight out. And when they eventually go to court for a sentence, they get let off or get some derisory, pathetic little sentence. Unless they get tough on this and start having mandatory sentences, you do this is what's going to happen to you. And the maximum, we have a minimum and maximum. Maximum will always be to life. Why? It's quite obvious to anybody. Ask any prison officer. We know exactly what you're saying. You've got a violent, dangerous... I think it's Norm said earlier on your channel. So you get 10 years for manslaughter, whatever, you're out in 5.
No, I mean, it is mad. You're so right. It's one thing catching the criminals and having a sense of law and order on our streets, but it's alongside that, you have to make sure that, the real criminals, the violent ones, once you've picked them up and taken them off the streets, you've got to keep them off the streets until they've served their sentence.
There's no deterrent. They don't care. They know that nothing's going to happen to them. There is no deterrent. And I said to them, if I pass a law, if you're caught with any sort of bladed weapon or a lump of wood with nails in it, which is obviously a weapon, you're going to get 10 years minimum to life. A gun, 30 minimum to life. Automatic weapons or acid, 40 minimum to life. Use it against anyone. Attempted murder, life means life, the same as murder. Just get the... And it would deter 90% of the people. The odd one that doesn't, who cares? They're off our streets and no longer a danger to the public.
Look, it's so concerning. And, of course, the two people, I think I'm right in saying, in Liverpool who've been... who were sort of arrested with regard to the horrific murder of 9-year-old Olivia, I think both of those two people had a significant previous record and had been released early from prison.
Exactly. We're saying it, but my system, they would still be in there.
Exactly.
For a very long time.
They would still be there, and therefore they wouldn't have been out charging around with a gun, and Olivia, in that scenario, would have still been alive. Stuart, great call. Thank you very much for that. We've just got time to squeeze Brett in before the end of the show. Hi, Brett.
Hi. It was something you were discussing earlier in the day, earlier in the hour, about cost of living crisis and energy. And I just wanted to add in, because it was about fracking, that was right.
Yes.
To me, fracking, drilling oil, the idea is that we've got somehow we're solving the problem of the prices at the moment via any of those mechanisms, including nuclear, is like a decade, 2 decades away before you have any of that happening.
Look, you're right. There's no question. It's not tomorrow. I mean, I've talked about it. It's a 4 to 10 year solution. We won't have a new nuclear power station. You're quite right, Brett, for a decade. And in the interim, we've got to deal with the price crisis. But once you increase the supply, then actually the prices will come down, and we've got much more chance of being able to return it to normal.
Can I just point out also, this should have been the spur for us to start really getting serious about replacing what we currently use fossil fuel-wise with renewables. It's already well not known that renewables are far cheaper, and it's super cheaper now. And also...
The renewables are not cheaper, actually. I mean, the average price of gas between... No, hang on. The average price of gas in the UK between 15 and 19 is half the latest renewable wind auctions. Look, renewables have their role, but they shouldn't be subsidised, and they're not...
Richard, that is just not the case. There are economic figures in the Economist, in the Financial Times, that I can't hear you now.
I'm listening intently, Brett. Let me tell you, I'll get you the figures because I've just looked at them literally today. and I can prove it. They're claiming it's cheaper. Trust me, Brett, it's not. It's, as I say, the average gas price was about half. But, Brett, I've got to go because we've got the news desk coming up. Thank you very much for that call from Brett. He disagrees with me about the price of renewables. I'll check it and double-check it. I know that I'm right. Anyway, it's been a great show.